It all began with a notebook my mother handed me. She told me she found it while cleaning out the closet. This old notebook, covered with mold, so dirty, was a diary that belonged to my grandfather, who passed away years ago. It contained his distant memories. I wonder if you still remember how we first met and our many adventures. It all seemed like a dream. We ran like the wind during those warm summer days long ago. You were a piece of a star that fell from the sky. I can still relive the memories of those days long past, just by closing my eyes like so, and whispering your name into the desolate night. Kid. Kid. Whoa. Kid. Hey, kid. Are you ready, kid? I know you're anxious, but stay on your toes. Yeah, likewise, mate. You mess up, and I'm leaving you behind. Got that, Surge? Come on, Magill. Let's go. That bastard Lynx is gonna get what he deserves. Say your prayers. Not that it'll do you any good. Ha! Man, I can't believe this. This game was created way back in 1996. Radical Dreamers. A treasure that cannot be stolen. The old lady's tip-off was right on the money. The counterspell and the barrier around the outer walls could have done a real number on us. Kid's plain, unadorned braid flicked back and forth across her shoulders as she walked. We picked our way through the elaborate lattice of the manor's magic shields, moving in closer and closer to Lord Ling's stronghold. There were the three of us, Kid, Magill, and me. I guess it must have been 3 years already since I first met Kid. Back then, I was just a wandering musician, traveling wherever my feet would take me, and wherever a few tunes would pay for a warm bed. It was in the Outlands, in a town called Regiora, where we first ran across one another, and since then, she dragged me along on a whole bunch of adventures, and misadventures too. Ah, Kid. She was a thief, and not just any thief, just a few months shy of 17, and already renowned as one of the realm's greatest. What's more, she was achingly beautiful, stylish, a joy to be around, and a dab hand at campsite cooking. Or so she'd like to claim. The truth was a little different. Those bandits with hearts of gold you've heard about in stories? The ones who steal from the rich to give to the poor? Yeah, that wasn't Kid style. She was short-tempered, prone to lying, bossy, and obsessed with money, and rarely did she care to listen to a single word anyone said to her. But she wasn't all bad. Probably. Maybe. Sometimes. She had her moments anyway. I glanced over my shoulder to see a shadow hovering behind us, blending into the darkness like smoke. Magill. Also known as Magill the Shade. He was Kid's partner, but even after 3 years, I still knew hardly anything about him. All I knew that he was around 30 years old, and not much of a talker, but he was one heck of a mage. I heard that he and Kid started working together way before I met her. He always covered the top half of his face with a mask, and I'd never seen what he looked like underneath. He was a man so mysterious that it sometimes seemed like he was an interloper from another world. It wasn't like Kid was exactly big on details about her past, but Magill? He might as well not have had one. And Kid didn't seem to know much about her partner in crime either. What kind of a man he was, what kind of life he'd lived before, nothing. You might ask how exactly I wound up being a part of this merry band. Well, it's complicated. I guess you could say that life doesn't always turn out the way you think it will. Kid, who was heading up our little raiding party, suddenly stopped dead. "Look lively, boys. We got company." We glanced around warily as cold, cruel eyes emerged from the darkness. I heard a low growl. Dark shadows prowled through the night, surrounding us. A pack of wildcats. There must have been about 10 of them. A thrill of fear ran down my spine. Flustered, I pulled my knife from my belt. Kid calmly shifted into a fighting stance. "Watch yourselves. I don't reckon these buggers been treated for rabies." The wildcats snarled and growled as they slowly closed in on us, drawing the noose tighter and tighter. Their eyes glinted in the darkness like fireflies, and strings of eager spittle dripped wetly to the ground. Then one of them sent an almighty roar soaring to the moon, and the hunt was on. What was I gonna do? I attacked. I slashed at a nearby wildcat with my knife. The beast tried to leap clear, but I was already too close. I felt the blade make contact and was rewarded with a screech of pain. The wildcat jumped away, this time managing to put some space between us. It looked like I hadn't cut it very deeply. I stood my ground, changing my grip on the knife and waiting for another chance to attack. "Search! Behind you!" Panicked by Kid's warning, I whirled wildly around and came face to face with a pair of eyes blazing like hellfire. I attacked. A wildcat was coming right at me. By reflex, I ducked, its attack swiping through the air directly over my head. I felt its hot breath on my cheek as it flew by me. At the same time, I thrust my knife upward, plunging it into the beast's belly. With a horrible cry of agony, the wildcat crashed face first into the ground. But I lost my balance in the chaos and fell down in a heap as well. I rolled over and was only able to stagger back to my feet before readying myself for the next opponent. I was breathing heavily. The handle of my knife was slick with sweat, and I tightened my grip. With a kick like a bolt of lightning, Kid landed a clean hit on the flank of a nearby wildcat. It staggered before losing its footing, letting out a pathetic cry. But Kid had already moved in to finish it off. And then the roar of fire. A burning smell filled my nostrils, and next to me, a shrill screech pierced the air. Magill's fire spell engulfed the head of the nearby wildcat. It fled, darting off into the darkness like an arrow. I scanned the area. Only moments ago, we had been surrounded, but now, there wasn't a single wildcat left. Kid and Magill had either sent the rest off with their tails between their legs, or put paid to them once and for all. Huh. You're dreaming if you think a pack of flea-biting moggies is gonna stop us, Lynx. Kid crossed her arms and flashed a true infant grin. Meanwhile, I was panting heavily, and it felt like my legs were about to give out from under me. I collapsed to my knees, overwhelmed by what I'd just been through. Phew. I'd taken a few hits, but I was fine otherwise. A couple of scars to talk about later maybe, but nothing that would stop me carrying on. Are you hurt? Magill looked down at me, his face expressionless as ever. No worries, Mag. He'll be right, said Kid, barging in to get a better look at me. He may be a winging sook, but it'll take more than a few scratches to kill this one. She was nothing if not sympathetic. But she was right. This was no time to be bemoaning my lot. We hadn't even reached the manor yet. I dabbed at my wounds with a tincture-soaked cloth and wrapped them with bandages, then looked up at the other two. We're just getting started. I grinned back, putting a brave face on things. That's what I like to hear, Kid cheerily announced from close quarters. But then her eyes turned cold, like a cool glow of the moon in the night sky. It's gonna be a long night. I nodded, trying my hardest not to utterly lose myself in her pale blue eyes. Alright, let's get this show back on the road. She turned away and marched off, deeper into the trees, without looking behind to see if me and Magill were following her. Magill, of course, was already right behind her, his unhurried gait making it seem as though nothing much had happened at all. I jumped back up to my feet to chase after them. I'd be in for even more trouble than I bargained for if I got separated from them. The dark forest inside the manor's perimeter seemed to go on forever, a labyrinth of trees and boulders. The manor itself loomed in the distance, glowering over the vast grounds, and hidden within was a veritable mountain of treasure just waiting for us. Lord Lynx was the noble who ruled the remote territory of Regiora. He was also Kid's mortal enemy. We were there that night to steal a certain jewel he kept locked away in his most closely guarded vault, the Frozen Flame. The Frozen Flame was veiled in mystery. It was said to be imbued with an uncanny energy and possessed of a beauty and clarity that made it a priceless treasure. Countless thieves had tried to steal it, and not one of them had come close to succeeding. Nor had any of them escaped the manor alive. And now it was our turn to try and sneak into this place of death. Led by a girl who had the ambition to make the impossible possible, a hunger for vengeance that drove her onward, and a desire for riches that could never be satisfied. As we pressed on through the tree-filled darkness, the shadows gave away last, revealing the true extent of the vast mansion. Finally! Say your prayers, Lynx, 'cause we're coming for you. Keeping to the overgrowth and the shadows of the trees, we made our way around the manor walls in search of a means of entry. Eventually, we came to a terrace overlooking the garden. There was no sign of any guards nearby. The only thing surrounding the manor was an uncanny stillness. This will lead us straight into the west wing. Just as well, we don't have any business in the rest of the manor tonight, said Magill, gazing up at the dark building towering over us in the night. Alright then, what are we waiting for? With that, Kid made to vault over the railing of the terrace. Stop, Magill hissed sharply. Remember what we're here for. Our main target is the vault, and the frozen flame within it. We focus on this above all else. Your vengeance is of secondary concern. Agreed? Glancing over her shoulder, Kid replied with a reluctant, Yeah. Don't get your knickers in a twist. But if we happen to run into him, I'm gonna knock that Drongo's block off, and neither you or anybody else is gonna stop me. I guess Kid was going to get her way whether we liked it or not. Let's go, boys. Night is young. She cleared the railing with a sprightly hop and vanished inside the manor. I glanced toward Magil and nodded in silence. We followed Kid's lead and were soon inside Lord Link's lair. The darkness swallowed us whole. A corridor stretched off to the left and right from the terrace. It seemed equally dark and chilly in both directions. We decided to go right down the corridor. We pressed on through the darkness, down corridors that turned and twisted, snake-like, this way and that. Everything around us was still and silent, and it felt strangely like we were being watched. It was as if... Too fast. We continued, creeping cautiously down the corridors. Kid moved proudly and stealthily like a cat stalking its prey, while in the shadows Magil followed, gliding swiftly and silently like a sinister breeze. We pushed on. A short way along the corridor running from the right-hand side of the terrace, we found an ancient-looking door, again on our right. Kid pressed an ear against it, listening for any signs of life. Dead quiet. Don't reckon there's anybody in there. We opened the door. In we go. Kid stilled her breath and reached for the handle. The door wasn't locked. It swung slowly open. What's this room supposed to be? Place is a dump. Kid had poked her head in through the door, taking a quick peek to see if there was anyone inside, and was disappointed by what she found. The room was large and littered with peculiar-looking machinery and knickknacks, all of which were covered in dust, and had seemingly been dumped there haphazardly. Everything looked like it had been there, rusting for a very long time. The ends of the room were completely dark, and it was impossible to tell just how big it was, or even what the walls and floor looked like. It seemed the manor's inhabitants had turned the old clock tower into a makeshift storage space some time ago. I stepped warily inside. Leave that alone. I looked over toward Magil and saw Kid trying to pull something from the shadows. It was a huge sword that appeared to be very old indeed. You don't need that old bludgeon. It'll only get in the way. And as much of an antique as it is, it won't fetch much on the market in that condition. Yeah, reckon it might, you know? There's plenty of collectors who just love old bits of junk. Well, some old bits of junk. Pouting, Kid left the sword where she stood. At least she put it back down gently. It was then that we heard a voice from the shadows. And what exactly are you doing here, I just about jumped out of my skin. Who's there? Kid and Magil turned to face the voice, ready for a fight. A wizened crone emerged from the shadows. She was hunched over and wore a hood draped over her face. I could tell at a glance that she wasn't just old, she was positively ancient. It's just some doddery old bag. What do you think you're doing sneaking up on us like that? Kid's shoulders relaxed as the tension left her body. Magil, however, continued to give the woman a piercing stare. Oh, What an impish little thing you are. Here to visit a friend, perhaps? Not in the dead of night, I suspect. The crone narrowed her eyes. Let's get a closer look at you. Ah, yes. You must be here to get your revenge on Lynx. How did she... My heart jumped. She seemed to know exactly who we were. We were in trouble. What if she sounded the alarm? We'd have to give up on the treasure and run for our lives. What were we going to do? Defiantly tell her she was right. So what if we are? Kid narrowed her eyes right back at the crone. What's it to you if we're here to get our revenge on old Lynxy boy? Gonna do something about it? You never change, do you? The crone chuckled madly, her small frame shaking. Ah, the boldness of youth. Yes, that's the spirit. You what? Kid looked at the crone, completely confused. I was no less mystified. What the heck are you on about? Oh, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. Yes, it was around then that an innocent young thief stole into the manor, looking to singe Lord Lynx's whiskers. She couldn't have been much older than 10 now that I think of it. Shocked, my gaze turned to Kid. A wet glint had appeared in Kid's eyes, but her glare was like ice. It certainly felt as if the temperature in the room had suddenly dropped below freezing. With a chuckle, the crone continued her story, pretending not to have noticed the change in mood. She was an orphan, you know. Came after Lynx to avenge a woman who'd loved her like her own daughter. But all the vengefulness in the world couldn't change the fact that she was only a little girl. She was no match for Lynx's men, sadly, and they quickly captured her. Lynx is the kind of man one would fear to have for an ally, never mind a foe. Had it not been for the timely assistance of a friend of hers, the girl would have certainly been executed. The way the people of the manor told it, the very shadows pitied the girl and rushed in to spirit her away. I wonder how much of the tale could be true. I have nothing but sympathy for those who know failure, of course. You can't win all the time. And sometimes, against all the odds, fate really can be foiled, and the clockwork of history sent into disarray. No, the ones I have no patience for are those who do not recognize their failure, or who fail and choose to give up as a result. The crone looked up from under her hood, stared Kid directly in the face, and grinned. Kid's anger faded, giving way to a dumbfounded expression. If you wish to steal the jewel from Lynx, if you truly wish to triumph, you will have to let go of a treasure of your own, Kid. For as long as you cling onto it, the hands of your clock will never move. They'll stay exactly where they came to rest all those years ago. Who are you? Me? Why, I'm just an old bag like you said. I do apologize, I must have taken up a lot of your time with all my babbling. I'll leave you in peace. Oh, but before I go, the crone turned to face me. You seem to be injured, young man. If you wish, I can take a look at your wounds. With all the attention suddenly turned toward me, I panicked a little. All right then, please do. What? All right then, please do. The crone muttered a few words as her bony fingers drew sigils in the air. A pale, gentle light began to surround my body, filling me with a strange warmth. Strike a light! That's no ordinary spell. Kid was impressed. I felt my wounds healing and heard a nostalgic melody that soothed the wounds in my heart. Before I realized it, the crone was gone. Hey lady! Kid strained her eyes, scanning the darkness. But there was no one to be seen, and her calls went unanswered. Who the bloody heck was that? Kid looked like she'd just woken up on the floor of the Laughing Pig after a few too many. What did she mean about you having to let go of a treasure? Well, we won't find any answers here. Time to move on. Mago brought us back down to earth, emotionless as always. It almost seemed as if he thought nothing had happened at all. Yeah, I guess you're right. Kid walked quickly to the door, keen to move on. Hold it, you. Just as I was about to follow Kid out of the room, she jabbed me in the side with her elbow. You stinky little bugger, Surge. Why didn't you tell her to share some of that healing magic with the rest of us? Classic Kid. The door led back into the corridor, which stretched off to the left and right. Right way lay the depths of the manor, while the way to our left led back to the terrace. We went right down the corridor. Continuing on down the corridor, we came across a rather sturdy-looking door on our left. A little further on stood a stairway leading upward. Well, this door's clearly meant to keep something safe. If there ain't some kind of treasure behind it, me name ain't Kid. Sniff, sniff. Yep, that's the smell of cold hard cash, alright, she muttered to herself as she began to inspect the door more closely. We went inside. Bah! What am I, stupid? Of course it's bloody locked. Kid had tried the door handle a few times before giving it a grumpy kick. Bloody door's got a magic barrier on it, and the bloody barrier's got a barrier of its own to boot. It'll take more than me putting the boot in to get through all that. I see. Then unless we find the key, we don't have a hope of getting inside. Reckon I can handle a key hunt, especially if it's that idiot Lynx who's hidden it. If we can find his room, I'll sniff it out in 2 seconds flat. You just watch. There was little more we could do here, so we decided to look elsewhere. We continued on. The corridor ended at the foot of some stairs. With Kid in the lead, we headed upstairs. It was dark, and the stairwell was narrow. We watched our footing carefully as we climbed. The stone of the steps was worn smooth with age, and I lost count of how many there were as we spiraled onward and upward. An awful sense of foreboding haunted me. I had no idea why, but it felt as though we were marching to the gallows. When we arrived at the top of the stairs, we were greeted by an old heavy door looming in the silence. All was deathly silent, and the still, clammy air added to the sense of ominous apprehension. Something's very wrong here, I muttered without thinking. I hear cursed whispers from beyond the door, Maggio added, doing nothing to lift the mood. Grow up, will ya? Kid shot back at us, derisively. She was already examining the door. Well, it ain't locked, and I don't hear anyone inside. Let's do a save. Save. We went inside. Alright, here goes. Kid tried the handle. The door opened, and with a slow, heavy swing, revealed what lay beyond. It was a small, cylindrical room that appeared to be the inside of one of the stone towers. It was completely deserted and there were no windows. What's this supposed to be? Something about this place gives me the creeps. Still standing in the doorway, Kid seems suddenly taken aback. There might be something in here. Let's take a closer look. A closer look at a bloody empty room? Ha! Might as well, I guess. We did climb all them stairs. Kid stepped through the door, grumbling under her breath. I scanned the room and then noticed something on the floor. The flagstones were covered in dozens of narrow scratches, and in places, there were thick black stains. Something in the stains spoke of a horror that no amount of scrubbing would ever wash away. A malice and a sadness beyond imagining. There's something written here. Crouching in front of a wall, Magio was inspecting some brownish markings that looked like more of the same stains. Someone's carved letters into the wall and scrambled them using blood magic. Kid had gone over to take a look. Looks pretty old, hard to read too. Some of it's been worn away. Let's see. I cannot hold out much longer. My only hope now is to leave the Akasian signet in this room. The Akasian signet? Suddenly, the door slammed shut. We jumped to our feet with a start. From above us, we heard an unsettling creaking sound. The walls and floor began to tremble. What the hell's going on? Kid's eyes darted around the room as she desperately tried to figure out what was happening. The creaking sound from above continued, and the ceiling moved ominously closer. Up there! We've walked right into a bloody trap. Kid bit her lip. We gotta do something and fast. We don't have time to sit and think about this. We tried to stop the ceiling. We tried to smash down the wall. Oh, what was I going to do? Surge! Kid's shriek rang in my ears and then... Shh! Chunk! The edge of one of the descending blades sliced into my forehead. There was no time. What were we going to do? We tried to stop the ceiling. Right! We need to stop the ceiling! Yelled Kid. But how? I had no idea. Is there a hidden switch somewhere? Panicked, we brushed our hands against the floor and walls to see if anything had escaped our notice. Chunk, one of the descending blades, stabbed into my shoulder. We had to do something. We tried to smash down the wall. Good idea. There's gotta be a hidden door or something somewhere, yelled Kid. Panicked, we tried thumping the walls to see what we could find. But all we came up against was solid, unyielding stone. The edge of one of the descending blades sliced into my forehead. There was no time. We tried to barge the door down. Hya! Kid sprang at the door like an arrow, slamming into it shoulder first. But it was far too heavy, and her light frame bounced right off it. Damn it! Magio raced toward the door like the wind, smashing into it with ferocious force. It made a creaking sound and shook from the impact, but stood firm. Desperately, I hurled myself at it too. No! The shock of the impact rushed through my body, but it was no good. Meanwhile, the rusty creaking from above continued, as did the ceiling's inexorable journey downward. And to make matters worse, now countless blades were popping in and out. Search, Magio! This is gonna take 3 of us! Timing our blows, we all charged the door at once. Once, twice, a 3rd time. And the door was open, and we were collapsed in a heap in the corridor outside. What? Behind us, we heard the sound of the bladed ceiling grinding on the stone floor of the tower room. The metallic scraping noise it made was awful. We could only look on in silent horror at the fate we'd so narrowly evaded. The The machinery continued for a short while before slowly coming to a stop. It seemed the ceiling trap had finally finished its grisly work. Bugger me. Talk about a nasty surprise. Is it some sort of execution chamber? Magio continued, seeming to be deep in thought. In any case, that writing mentioned Akasia. Yeah, what was all that about? I asked. The Akasia Dragoons, the elite knightly order serving General Viper, who once governed the territory of Galesburg to the west. Former knightly order, I should say. They were wiped out more than a decade ago, by the lord of this very manor, no less. Thanks for the history lesson, Meg. Kid rose to her feet, patting off the dust. Too bad we're not here for fairy tale nights. Come on. We got a lot more exploring left to do. Magio shrugged silently, and we headed back to the stairs. With Kid in the lead, we headed downstairs. We went down the stairs and continued straight ahead, eventually coming across a sturdy-looking door on our right. The corridor continued further on, back toward the terrace. We went inside. Bah, what am I, stupid? Of course it's bloody locked. There's little more we could do here, so we decided to look elsewhere. We continued down the corridor. Eventually coming across a door on our left. The corridor continued on back towards the terrace. We went inside. In we go. Kid stilled her breath and reached for the handle. The door wasn't locked. It swung slowly open. The room was completely silent and there was no sign of life. Hello? Any little old ladies in here? No? No kindly old dears who know more than they're letting on, lurking in the shadows? Come out wherever you are. Oi, lady! Show yourself! The silence spoke volumes. This is a waste of time, pronounced Magil flatly, turning on his heel. We left the dusty old storage room. The door led back into the corridor, which stretched off to the left and right. Rightward lay the depths of the manor, while the way to our left led back to the terrace. We went right down the corridor. Continuing on down the corridor, we came across a rather sturdy-looking door on our left. We continued on. The corridor ended at the foot of some stairs. With Kid in the lead, we headed upwards. It was dark and the stairway was narrow. We watched our footing carefully as we climbed. An old sturdy-looking door. We went inside. You still want to go in there, Serge? Hey, feel free, but I ain't in the mood to get squashed flat and ground into gristle, said Kid, derisively. And then she took a careful look around and leaned in close. Don't tell me that torture stuff isn't your thing, is it? I sighed and slumped my shoulders. With Kid in the lead, we headed downstairs. We went down the stairs and continued straight ahead, eventually coming across a sturdy-looking door on our right. We continued on. We continued down the corridor, eventually coming across a door on our left. The corridor continued on back toward the terrace. We continued on. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We kept following the corridor. We took the corridor leading from the left-hand side of the terrace, eventually arriving at an intersection with some stairs. The path to the right led down the stairs. The path to the left was a dark side passage, and the main corridor continued straight onward. We went down the stairs. Slowly, we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into blackness as we went. At the bottom, the path split. The way to the left continued on to an atrium that resembled a sort of plaza, while the path to the right was a winding passageway that trailed off into darkness. We took the passageway to the right. We went down the stairs, then took the passage to our right. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the right-hand side. Something smelled fresh and pleasant. Flowers. Was it coming from inside? We went inside. We found ourselves in a tidy, welcoming room. The knickknacks and curios dotted around the place seemed to be well loved. The stately desk and the cozy-looking bed nearby, meanwhile, suggested the room's occupant was no stranger to luxury. Though the room was richly furnished, somehow it still felt awfully lonely. Kid took a quick look around before commenting. "It's Lynx's girls' room." A half-written letter on the desk and a teacup still warm suggested that the lady of the manor was still nearby. But it didn't seem that anyone was here now. We decided to search the room. Some charming flowers, a discarded cotton handkerchief, a small bottle of perfume. Nothing that meant much to me, nor anything that seemed particularly valuable. Kid seemed to have the same impression and scanned the room clearly, not expecting to find anything. The only item of note was a small antique box which bore a crest resembling a viper. I decided where to look next. I picked up the little box. I opened the chest of drawers. I examined the bed. I picked up the little box. I picked up the small wooden box on the bookshelf. I gently opened the lid and was greeted by a soothing melody. A music box. There was something about that song. I know this tune. Kid was standing next to me, and I could see something had changed in her expression. "You do, huh, Kid?" "Someone used to sing it to me a long time ago." She turned her gaze downward and went silent. "Kid?" Startled, she turned to me. Her eyelashes glistened as if wet with dew. She walked to the door, not saying a word. "Hey, Kid, wait up!" We left the room. Was she crying? Was Kid crying? Maybe I was just seeing things. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. The path to the right led deeper into the darkness of the manor. Meanwhile, going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We took the passage to the right. We went down a dark passageway, eventually finding ourselves at a sturdy-looking, immaculately polished door. Kid sniffed at the air. "Just as I thought. Something stinks here. I reckon we found the beast's lair, lads." In the darkness, Kid's lips twisted into a grin that turned my blood cold. We went inside. Kid opened the door and slipped inside. It was Lynx's room, but he didn't seem to be around. The bugger's gone and scarpered, 'cause he heard I was coming. There was something deeply unpleasant about the room. There wasn't anything unusual about the furniture and fittings, not how they looked or how they were made, but taken as a whole, it all felt discordant. Was this a reflection of Link's? A seemingly ordinary facade that hid a disturbing truth only some could see. Right. I bet we'll find the key to the vault in here, or a clue about where to find it. I started searching through the room. The desk drawers, the paintings on the wall, the vase on top of the side table. I left no stone unturned. There didn't seem to be anything suspicious. But as I scanned the room, something unusual caught my eye. There was a pedestal in one corner with a significant-looking scarlet cloth drawn over it. I slowly raised my hand toward it. I carefully pulled the cloth away, revealing a mirror. It was old-fashioned, and of an elaborately decorated style I'd seen before. And in it was reflected a statue of Venus. Suddenly, the eyes of the statue shone with light. What is your desire? The mirror, it's speaking. Kid and Magiel ran to my side. There's no need for panic. It's a whispering mirror, nothing more, said Magiel flatly. What's one of those? A magical mirror in which a spirit dwells. The spirit can freely move between its own and other mirrors, and will share its wisdom with those who ask. Interesting. What should I ask it? I asked it about Kid's measurements. I want to know Kid's measurements, I blurted out. The wind was immediately knocked out of me by one of Kid's trademark kicks. Look, the mirror is showing us something, muttered Magiel thoughtfully, pointing at it. Kid, who was sitting on my back and bashing my head into the ground, stopped what she was doing and glanced at the mirror. I looked up as well. Watery ripples flowed from the center of the glass, and then a series of numbers began to float up from below. 5275. While I was reading the numbers, Kid mashed her hand into my face. Who told you to look, creep? Let me write down the numbers, just in case. I mean, note the numbers. 5, 5, 2, 7, 5. Who told you to look, creep? I had no idea what the figures even meant, though. Kid seemed confused as well. It was up to Magiel to explain it in his usual deadpan manner. Her height, shoe size, and ring size. Was that it? I felt so cheated. Wait, that's not what I meant, I started. But the mirror had fallen silent and didn't seem to be listening anymore. The spirit of the mirror appears to have moved on, muttered Magiel. Really? Huh. What a waste, I grumbled. Kid glared at me, her arms folded. Well, now you know my measurements. You won't have any trouble finding me some nice new clothes, a pair of boots, and a pretty ring to say sorry when we get out of here, eh? You owe me, and you better not forget it. I'd really gone and dropped myself in it this time. Anyway, Mirror's not listening anymore. Reckon we're done here. Sighing, I left the room, already trying to work out how much of my cut I'd wasted before we'd even stolen anything. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. We retraced our steps. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the left-hand side. It was Riddell's room, Link's daughter. We went inside. Let's come back later. We left Riddell's room for now. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. Going right would take us to Link's room. Meanwhile, going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We took the passage to the right. What is your desire? I asked it about Kid's measurements. I asked it where Link's was. I asked it where the key to the vault was. Do you know where the key to the vault is? The mirror's reflection rippled and changed to reveal a room with numerous bookshelves. A deep, sonorous voice spoke. You will find the key in the place I have revealed, the study. It is inside a book with a purple cover in the furthest bookshelf from the door. The image of the study vanished from the mirror and the voice went silent. It appears the spirit has left for another mirror, commented Magill. To the study then. As I made to leave the room, a low voice rumbled through the air, stopping me dead in my tracks. Beware, he knows. Was it the voice of the mirror again? What did it mean? Hurry up, or we're leaving you behind, Serge, called Kid from outside. Flustered, I rushed after her. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. We retraced our steps. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the left-hand side. It was Riddell's room, Link's daughter. We went inside. Let's come back later. We left Riddell's room for now. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. Going right would take us to Link's room. Meanwhile, going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We took the passage to the left toward the atrium. We continued down the corridor until we reached an intersection. There was a left turn in the corridor, leading to some stairs going upward. The corridor also continued straight on, towards the entrance to a large plaza-like atrium. We went into the atrium. Kid poked her head through the arch-shaped door and took a look around. Huh, it's big in here. Must be some kind of hall. We took a cautious look around, then entered one after another. The atrium was like a beautiful plaza, complete with a statue that doubled as a fountain. Pillars and arches lined the walls, and in the center was a small pool of clear water above which the statue stood. On the other side of the room, I could see another arched entrance like the one we had come through. Oh, that's cold. Kid was scooping up water from the fountain. I went over to her and, resting my hand on the edge of the marble basin, peered into the pool beneath. Shadows flickered under the water's surface. You reckon those fish are rare? As in, valuable? Kid leaned right over the edge. I couldn't see the bottom. I wondered how deep it was. The shadow of one of the fish grew larger and larger. Whoa! Sensing danger, Kid leapt back from the edge. Clack! A fish leaped out from the water and snapped at her, its jaws bristling with razor-sharp teeth. Its mouth closed shut on the air where she'd been only moments before, and with a splash, the fish darted back under the water. Pteranodons, deadly carnivorous fish with razor-sharp teeth and a powerful jaws that could snap a monster's horn in half. Staring in horror, I watched as dark shadows began to gather in what little of the pool I could make out. The pteranodons must have detected prey. Soon the room was filled with the sound of splashing and snapping as the fish teemed at the water's surface. Bloody hell! Even Kid was uneasy. She took another step back. How many pteranodons were in the pool? A thought of what would happen if they all leapt clear of the water and attacked at once crossed my mind. A bead of cold sweat rolled down my forehead. Suddenly, the water coming from the statue turned crimson. and shot out in a powerful jet that nearly touched the ceiling. Kid jumped back again. I just stood in shock watching the torrent of water erupting from the statue. The scarlet waters continued to gush out from the fountain. The pool grew redder and redder and started to overflow. We looked on, entranced, but the spell was soon broken when we realized that the water was starting to flow faster and faster over the rim of the basin. The pteranodons began to jump and snap at the water's surface with bloodthirsty glee. I was brought to my senses by the dull snapping sound of pteranodons. We rushed to the exit on the other side. Quick, there's an exit on the other side. I pointed at the doorway opposite where we'd come in. Tried my hardest to rush across the red pool, sending up great gouts of crimson water. But it was thick as blood, and I found myself struggling to move. I felt sharp jabs of searing pain as countless pteranodons snapped at my legs. Kid gritted her teeth in pain. Serge, we gotta do something before we get turned into mincemeat. What was I gonna do? Rush to the exit on the other side. Oh, a bolt of pain shot up my calf, and I came close to fainting. I stood my ground as best as I could, flicking away the pteranodon that had bitten me. But soon, a horrible ring of shadows began to circle the water around me. I was surrounded. Rush to the exit. Quick, there's an exit on the other side. I pointed at the doorway opposite where we'd come in. Tried my hardest to rush across the red pool, sending out great gouts of crimson water, but it was thick as blood, and I found myself struggling to move. Felt sharp jabs of searing pain as countless pteranodons snapped at my legs. Kid gritted her teeth in pain. Serge, we gotta do something before we get turned into mincemeat. Deal with the fish. What? You wanna try and pick this little lot off one by one? Kid glared back at me, her face a picture of exasperated disbelief. Don't be a bloody idiot, Serge. You wanna die here? While I stood there, my mouth agape, a pteranodon sank its teeth into my foot. A jolt of pain surged up my leg, making me jump. What was I gonna do? Rush back! Kid, let's get out of here. In a panic, we splashed through the water back to the corridor we came from. The fangs of the pteranodon snapped at my legs, and I felt a searing pain, but I had to endure it if I had any hope of reaching the entrance. Breathing heavily, I finally found myself back in the corridor outside. Phew, that was a close call. So that whole thing was a trap, eh? Talk about twisted. Lynx is even more of a sick bastard than I thought. I was about to say he wouldn't have to be if he didn't have to guard against people like her breaking into his home. But I thought better of it. Well, at any rate, I think we can consider that a dead end. Let's go back. Defeated, we left the atrium. Something caused Kid to stop in her tracks. Hello, hello, what do we have here? She pointed to the side of the entranceway to the hall. I found myself face to face with a sculpture of an old man's face, with a truly phenomenal beard. The sculpture's eyes seemed to gleam with life. For a piece of marble, it seemed almost too realistic. It's a mouth of truth, announced Magill. An enchanted statue that can tell when you're lying. If it catches you out, it'll bite your hand off. Magill kept his explanation simple so that Kid wouldn't drift off before he got to the important part. Huh. So, what's it doing here then? I suspect it's part of a greater mechanism. Stick your hand in its gob, do ya? Righto. Let's see what happens, shall we? With a mischievous glint in her eye, Kid darted over and stuck her hand in its mouth, without a moment's hesitation. She stood there for a moment waiting, but it didn't take long for her to get bored. Huh. Nothing. Suddenly, I had an idea. Hey kid, Who's the greatest thief who ever lived? Huh, me of course, ya jong. Kid answered without a moment's hesitation. And then suddenly her face twisted with pain. The teeth of the marble sculpture had clamped down on her hand. It bit me, she cried. Knock it off. Everyone knows it's the truth. Ow! The sculpture bit again as soon as she spoke. You little... A cold sweat formed on Kid's forehead. The sculpture was tightening its grip. It won't let go until you say something true. Despite the obvious urgency of the situation, Magil was matter-of-fact as ever. Just say anything, Kid. Anything, as long as it's the truth. Obviously, Kid wasn't listening. Instead, she just kicked awkwardly at the statue. Oi, Beardy! Let go of me, bloody hand! She planted her feet, either side of its mouth, and tried her hardest to pull herself out. She heaved, kicked and stamped, grunted and strained. Then finally, her hand popped free. I was taken aback by what I just witnessed and couldn't say a word. See? Told you it was the truth. Kid raised her hand in the air triumphantly, as if to demonstrate. I could see heavy bite marks. The sculpture hadn't come away from the struggle unscathed either. Kid's attempt to break free had left it cracked in several places. Magil pointed silently at part of it. I went to take a closer look and saw a pale, flesh-colored tongue. I expect we're supposed to put something there, commented Magil. Something? What exactly? I replied. Kid stood there for a moment, lost in thought, and then she started to unload all the knickknacks she'd been carrying. It was a strange collection of odds and ends pulled out from her pockets, her boots, and even from her braid. Alright, Serge, now it's your turn to have a go at that stupid statue. Kid grinned at me, holding her assortment of knickknacks out on the palms of both hands. I guess she's decided that whatever further horrors the statue had in store, she'd rather not face them herself. Nice, Kid, real nice. Grumbling to myself, I reached out to pick an item. I chose... a tube of lipstick. I picked up the small, lacquered tube of lipstick, and without knowing quite why, smeared it all over the statue's mouth. What are you... me lippy? Kid exploded with fury at the sight of the mouth of Truth's bright red lips. What are you getting so mad about? You don't even wear makeup. It's for marking our path to make sure we don't get lost. Huh, I didn't realize. Guess that would explain why you brought it with you. What exactly is that supposed to mean? What's so funny about me having a lipstick anyhow? Grr. Go. No, nothing at all. It didn't take much to tell that this was the calm before the storm. You better buy me some more when we're done here. Yep, she was mad, alright. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's just try something else. Kid gave me a doubting glare in response to my apology. Take this seriously or I'm through with you. I gulped and nodded in a panic, then reached out for the next item I chose. I tried everything 2 times, but nothing worked. To not waste my time on this. I lingered for a moment but pulled my hand away. It didn't seem like any of them was what we were looking for. Alright, let's just forget about it for now, muttered Kid, stowing all her valuables. I was sure we'd find a use for this stuff. Whatever, best get moving, eh? Defeated, we left the atrium behind us. Kid stopped in her tracks, signaling to us with a hand behind her back. She drew her knife and stared into the darkness. We heard the clinking of metal from just up ahead. Goblin guards. It wasn't likely there'd be anyone else going for a nighttime stroll around the manor wearing armor. I suggested a tactical retreat. I drew my knife and readied myself. I'd picked up on the situation pretty quickly and drew my knife, preparing for a fight. Kid gave me a sideways glance. "You know something? You're starting to look like a real thief. Now you just need to walk the walk," she grinned. "Alright, Serge. Magill, let's get him!" Kid leapt forward, confident as ever. It was like she thought nothing could go wrong. Wait a second, what's that? There was a leather bag on the ground, containing some recently cooked meat. Lucky me, I bit into the meat without a moment's hesitation. After devouring the unexpected windfall, I felt a little better. Wait, where's my share? Busted, I pretended not to hear. I was doing great. I felt like nothing could stop me. Maybe you ain't such a drongo after all. Just goes to show, any old weirdo can make something of themselves if they put their mind to it. Kid's eyes glinted with mischief. Leaving the atrium behind us, we immediately found ourselves at a fork in the path. We continued along the path ahead. We left the atrium and continued on down the path ahead. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the right-hand side. It was Riddell's room, Link's daughter. Riddell's room. We went inside. Let's come back later. We left Riddell's room for now. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. Going right would take us to Link's room. Meanwhile, going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We took the passage to the right toward Link's room. I asked it where Link's was. "Where the hell is Link's?" Kid asked, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. The surface of the mirror rippled with a gentle eddy. Slowly, letters began to take form. "What's this say?" "I humbly request that you go and find him yourself." That's cute. "You ever wonder what it's like to be shattered?" spat Kid, glaring at the mirror. It said nothing in response, as if pretending it couldn't hear. "The spirit of the mirror appears to have moved on. Speak if you wish, but it will not hear you," muttered Magill. Fine then, let's go somewhere else." With that, we left Lynx's room. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. We retraced our steps. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the left-hand side. It was Riddell's room. Link's daughter. We went inside. It seemed that someone had been here only moments ago. Let's come back later. We left Riddell's room for now. Passage outside the room continued to our left and right. Going right would take us to Link's room. Going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We took the passage to the left toward the atrium with the fountain. We continued down the corridor until we reached an intersection. There was a left turn in the corridor leading to some stairs going upward. The corridor also continued straight on towards the entrance to a large plaza-like atrium. We went into the atrium. "You gotta be kidding me," shouted Kid, glaring at me. "Are you telling me to swim through a bloody lake of pteranodons?" "Yeah, you can count me out, mate. How am I supposed to charm me victims with big chunks bitten out of me?" I guess she had a point. Here's a better plan. Why don't we go back to Beardy and try sticking something down his gob? Defeated, we left the atrium behind us. Leaving the atrium behind us, we immediately found ourselves at a fork in the path. To the right was a passage to some stairs leading upward. A dark passageway continued on, directly ahead of where we stood. We took the path to the right toward the stairs. The passage to the stairway was short. With Kid leading the way, we started to climb the narrow staircase. At the top, we found another intersection. Taking the corridor to the right would lead us to a dead end with a large door, while the way to the left led to the terrace. The narrow side passage in front of us was open. Corridor to the right. We took the corridor to the right. We continued onward past where the stairs and the side passage emerged into the main corridor. We found ourselves in front of some ornate double doors. We went inside. Kid gently pushed the heavy doors open and peeked inside. Doesn't look like anyone's in there. It seemed to be the main hall of the manor. There was a massive table, beautiful decorations on the walls, and thick columns decorated with sculptures of birds and beasts. Fixed to the wall in the back towered a tremendous pipe organ, like a burnished black mountain. Dozens of candles provided a dim flickering light, sending the corners of the room dancing in and out of shadow. Several enormous portraits glowered down from high on the wall. Were these the members of Link's family? I was busy staring at a painting depicting a young husband and wife when I realized that their eyes had turned to look right at me. Okay, they hadn't. Don't worry, this isn't about to turn into some dumb ghost story. It just looked that way because of the way the flickering light of the candles reflected against the glossy oil paints. Obviously. Probably. This place gives me the creeps. Get a load of all those ugly mugs. There's nothing for us here. Let's look somewhere else. Neither Magill nor I had any objections. We left the hall and returned to the corridor. Eventually, it led us to an intersection. There were some stairs going down, and to the right, a dark side passage. If we kept going straight on, we'd arrived back at the terrace. Back toward the terrace, down the stairs. We took the side passage. We headed down the side passage. At the end of it, we came to an old, immaculately polished door. We went inside. Kit gently pushed the door ajar and peeked in the room. The next thing I knew, she'd slipped inside. Magill and I followed. Looks like a study. The room was lit by the moonlight coming through the long, slender windows, slanting down in pale beams through the darkness. It was pretty big for a study, with an immaculate antique desk dominating the center. There were rows of bookshelves lined with thick, dusty old tomes. The wall to the rear of the room was decorated with paintings, and shelves of vases and painted plates stood before it. They all seemed to be curious, from foreign lands. Right, let's find this key. Light on her feet as always, Kid moved into the center of the room. What did the mirror say it again, Serge? She was asking me? How am I supposed to remember? The book with a purple cover in the far bookcase. I think it was supposed to be the one with a purple cover in the furthest bookcase. Alright, let's see. Seeming to take my word for it, Kid made for the case in question. Right, this is the one. Purple cover, purple cover. Aha! This has gotta be it. Kid pulled out a book from the bottom shelf. Magill and I watched as she opened it. The pages were hollowed out, and hidden inside was an old key decorated with strange symbols. Nailed it! Nice one, Serge! Kid snatched the key from inside of the book. Right, time to finally get a look at this treasure. Having got what we came for, we left the study. We made our way back down the dark side passage leading from the study. Eventually, we arrived back at the intersection. Some stairs led downward, and the corridor branched left and right. with the right branch leading back toward the terrace. Which way do I need to go again? We took the right branch to the terrace. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We kept following we went out onto the terrace. We went out onto the terrace. We went back into the manor. A corridor stretched off to the left and right from the terrace. It seemed equally dark and chilly in both directions. We decided to go right. We opened the door. "My lady, show yourself!" We left the dusty old storage room. The door led back into the corridor, which stretched off into left and right. Rightward lay the depths of the manor, while the way to our left led back to the terrace. We went right down the corridor. Continuing on down the corridor, we came across a rather sturdy-looking door on our left. This should do it. Kid slipped the key we'd found into the lock. Lines of magical light flashed across the surface of the door and vanished as various magical barriers were dispelled. Up, down, left, right, blue, red, green. Every color under the sun, and then all was quiet, and the darkness of the manor returned. Right, we're in. With a creak, the heavy door gently swung open. As soon as I saw what was inside, I gave a gasp. Kid stepped inside. Whoa! We've hit the mother lode! Out of the darkness loomed a veritable mountain of gold, silver, priceless works of art, and exquisite trinkets. Kid looked as if she were on the verge of drooling at the sight of it all, but what thief wouldn't have been? After all, this was the kind of hoard that few people would ever come across in their lifetime. The smallest fraction of this vast amount of riches would have seen even the most careless spendthrift set for life. Our goal is the frozen flame. Ignore the rest. Magill spoke with an icy dedication to our mission. He had not even batted an eyelid at the sight that greeted us. Yeah, I know. She was disappointed, of course, but she soon set about scanning the room for the object of our hunt. Wait, is that it? Look, on the pedestal over there. I turned to see what Kid was pointing at. There it was, a small yet perfectly formed jewel that gave off a pale red light. A jewel that looked like a flickering fire suspended in time. The frozen flame. Silently, Magill walked toward the pedestal. I called out, "Hurry, we don't have much time." "Quickly, Mag," I whispered. Kid urged him on too. "There's no time to waste. We gotta nab it now and then. Fine Lynx." If you insist. Magill gently raised his hand toward the frozen flame. Suddenly, a siren rang out. The room was flooded with light, and metal bars slammed down in front of the door. Metallic parrots in the four corners of the room suddenly came to life, flapping their wings and screeching. "Raurk! Thieves! Thieves!" Damn it, we'd walked right into a trap. Kid quickly turned to me. "Serge, this is your bloody fault for telling him to hurry up." "What the? So did you." Yeah, it's all my fault. "What the? So did you?" "Yeah, whatever, it's not like you weren't trying to get him to hurry up yourself," I muttered to myself. "What? You say something, Serge?" Kid glared at me. No, nothing at all." I shook my head madly, hoping to avoid her wrath. Magill cut in. "If you're quite finished, we had best apply ourselves to finding a way out. The guards will be here any moment now." He'd barely finished speaking when I heard voices in the distance. Which way? Which way?" The parrots! To the vault! To the vault!" The manor guards were coming. Kid dived behind a pile of gold coins. "Find somewhere to hide." In a panic, I looked around the room. There was a large chest sitting wide open next to a pillar. I rushed to empty it out, and then plunged in head first and closed the lid. Captain! There's no sign of anyone in there. No sign. Strange, peculiar. No one has ever escaped before. None have ever fled the mousetrap's clutches. None. I gently pushed up the lid of the chest and peeked through the gap. There were 5 goblins wearing suits of armor, unlocking the gate and about to make their way inside. One of the goblins looked around the room, jerking his neck as he peered into the shadows. Captain, what if it actually was a mouse this time? Chef was grumbling about mouses the other day, Captain. A mouse, a rodent, a rat. Would a teeny tiny thing like that really have sprung the trap? Replied a stocky, plump-looking goblin, who must have been the captain. He didn't seem convinced. That was when I heard a strange but oddly familiar sound from a corner of the room. Squeak, squeak. It was coming from where Kid was hiding. Startled, a troop of goblins stopped and looked at each other. For a moment, none of them spoke. Eventually, the goblin captain rubbed his chin through his jowls and offered his thoughts. Mouses. I'm sure Chef was complaining about cats. Meow, meow, that voice again. Again, silence. The goblins only looked at each other. Funny you should say that, Captain. The way I heard it, it weren't mouses or cats, it was a heckran. An awkward silence followed. In my mind's eye, I could see Kid racking her brains to work out what a heckran was. I smell a rat, by which I mean a thief. Following the captain's lead, the guards reached for their weapons, and then... Heck! Heck, heck, heck! Hecka, heck, heck! Ran heck! Listen, it really is a heckran by heck. That proves it. The goblin guards grinned and nodded to each other. Cheeky little devil surprised me there. Let's get out of here, boys. The goblins filed out of the vault. I breathed a sign of relief. And then they came charging back in again with a mighty roar. There's no such thing as heckrans. What? You sneaky little buggers, roared Kid, leaping out from behind the pile of gold coins. You're one to talk, thief. Then, brandishing their weapons menacingly, the goblins moved slowly forward, forcing Kid into a corner. I quietly eased open the lid of the coffer and slipped out. Can't leave you anywhere, can I? I muttered to myself. I knew Kid could handle herself, but I didn't fancy her odds against a whole troop of heavily armed goblins. For a moment, I wasn't sure what to do, but then I made up my mind. I had to save Kid. Right, I had to save Kid. There was no way I was going to abandon a friend in need. Even if it meant facing off against a group of 5 goblin guards, I'd find a way to come out on top. I hoped. I drew the knife from my belt and leapt into the middle of the room. Hey, snot for brains, over here! The goblins all turned to look at me at the same time. 10 beady, cruel little eyes all staring daggers at me. Fool! In a hurry to die, are we? I gulped, and wondering if making a run for it might have been a better plan of action after all. Ah, humans are so stupid. The goblin captain chuckled and licked his teeth. Yep, this one's got a death wish, alright. Why else would he be so stupid as to come after Lord Lynx's treasure? Ha! That's a first, being called dumb by a bloody goblin. Try acting tough when you're crying to your mom later on. Judging by Kid's response, she wasn't feeling massively threatened. And you tell her it was Kid who kicked your teeth in. So you're Kid, are you? The sneaky little slippery little thief we'd heard so much about. The goblin narrowed his eyes. Lord Lynx will be thanking me from now on until my retirement when I bring him your head on a silver platter. The goblin captain pulled his morning star from his waist and started swinging. You don't know who you're messing with. We ain't no ordinary goblins, sweetheart. We're Lord Lynx's elite guard, the goblins that gobble other goblins. That's right, the Gob Squad. Well, quit shooting your mouth off and let me stick a boot in it. And with that, Kid launched into a lightning-fast spinning kick. Her boot connected with the side of a goblin's head with a crack, sending the creature tumbling to the ground. Get him, lads. The boy looks scrawny. Start with him. The goblin captain spun the heavy metal ball of his morning star in the air. Glorious gob strike! Aye aye! The goblins charged across the room in response to their captain's command. Gob strike incoming! A goblin rushed toward me, swinging its weapon overhead. I wasn't going to make it. The morning star swept sideways through the air. I twisted my body to evade it, only for my torso to erupt in pain. Before I knew it, I was sent rolling across the floor in agony. Surge! Get up! Spurred on by Kid's scream, I staggered to my feet, clutching my side. I couldn't let it end like this. Another goblin flew down from overhead. Bobs away! With a growl, sent its morning star. I rolled away. I rolled across the floor, dodging the attack. But I wasn't fast enough, and the iron ball crashed straight into my back. I let out a howl as the force of the impact shuddered through my body. I never felt such raw pain in my entire life. I rolled around the floor in agony. Har har har, dance for me, boy, let me hear you sing. As I crawled on the floor, the shadow of the goblin towered over me like a black mountain. Die, brat! Its lips curled around its fangs in a leering grin, and it raised its weapon over its head. Oh no, you don't. You'll have to get through me first. Kid lashed out with a lightning-fast kick. There's more where that came from. Please, have mercy. The stricken goblin had collapsed to the floor, its eyes wide with fear. This isn't a game, Surge. Watch yourself, will ya? My head was spinning, but I managed to take the opportunity to rise to my feet. Gob strike incoming! I dodged. I swiftly dodged the attack. Well, I tried to at least. The morning star slammed into my shoulder with a sickening impact. I writhed in agony at the same time, trying not to lose sight of where the next blow might be coming from. Yeah, that's the spirit, Scrombag. I ain't done with you yet. Magiel conjured up a black wind, which surged forth like a shearing tempest. How does a human know a spell like that? Who are you? The goblin was quickly silenced as the rushing winds tore through it, and it collapsed to the floor with a final shriek. Magiel looked down at his victim, his expression unchanged. Another goblin flew down from overhead. Bombs away! With a growl, it sent... I jumped up for a counterattack. I was better off attacking than trying for a clumsy dodge. I tackled the goblin head-on and bounced helplessly off its enormous rock-like body, smashing headfirst into the floor. Nah! The shock of the impact jolted through my body. Magiel conjured up a black wind, which surged forth like a shearing tempest. How does a human know a spell like that? Who are you? Goblin was quickly silenced as the rushing winds tore through it, and it collapsed to the floor with a final shriek. Magiel looked down at his victim, his expression unchanged. Gob strike. I dodged the attack. I swiftly dodged the attack. The morning star brushed past my cheek. I don't know how, but I managed to escape unscathed. I lost my balance, though, and fell clumsily to the floor. Magiel conjured up a black wind, which surged forth like a shearing tempest. How does a human know a spell like that? Who are you? The goblin was quickly silenced as the rushing winds tore through it, and it collapsed to the floor with a final shriek. Magiel looked down at his victim, his expression unchanged. Long live Lord Lynx! Glory to the Gob Squad! With these final words, the goblin collapsed. That was the last of them. We made it. Huh. Piece of cake, said Kid, putting a brave face on things, as she wiped the sweat from her brow with her arm. And then she stopped and looked at me. Surge, What were you thinking, you great Drongo? Getting the goblins to come after you like that. You really didn't have to, you know? Still, thanks. Can't say I wasn't happy to see her crazy arse jump in like that. She was actually smiling at me. Kit's smile kindled a light inside me, and with it a peculiar warmth that came in ripples. Ah, seems Lynx has got the better of us. We turned to Magill. What do you mean? Asked Kid. We nabbed the frozen flame, didn't we? Not quite. It was a fake. Bait, to be precise. The red jewel in Magill's hand suddenly splintered and fell to pieces with a shattering sound. Gah! That rat bastard. Of course he wouldn't do this fair and square. Fair and square? Strange words coming from Kid. It seems that our quest for the frozen flame continues. Yeah, but before we get back to it, this bunch of Drongos said they're Link's elite guard, right? That they've got some nice loot on them. With that, she started unceremoniously rummaging through the fallen captain's pockets. She was like a hyena sniffing for scraps. Hello, hello, what's this? She'd found an odd metal plate. It resembled an open hand and was covered in runes. Reckon this might open some other magic door somewhere. Well, never know when it might come in handy. Either way, finders keepers. The plate vanished into Kid's pocket. Looks like there's nothing else worth taking, unless you count pocket lints and bits of string. She rose to her feet and looked around the room. You know, it's a real shame to leave the rest of all this loot just sitting here unloved. Suppose we can come back for it whenever. Kid turned to face us and flashed a grin. Alright lads, get a move on. It ain't gonna be dark forever. That hand-shaped plate is our only clue for now, muttered Magill, seemingly to himself. We left the vault, resuming our quest for the frozen flame. The corridor outside the room stretched off to the left and right. The path to the right led to the terrace. The left led to a staircase going upward. We went toward the terrace. Leading the group as usual, Kid suddenly stopped. What's that? She jabbed her finger at something in the darkness. Straining my eyes, I could see a pale white bundle of something shaking in the shadows. Huh, that's strange. I moved in front of Kid to try to get a better look. And then suddenly, the strange presence started crawling across the floor toward us at an unbelievable speed. I didn't have time to brace myself. The white figure reached my foot, then reared up to its full height. It was a skeleton. It didn't move after that. We're done here. Let's get moving. Wait a second. What's that? There was a leather bag on the ground, containing a sparkling gem. Now we're talking. Kid's face lit up with joy. Nice find, Serge. What a beaut. Kid snatched it away, leaving me to settle for the compliment. I was starting to feel a little worse for wear. I was going to have to be more careful from now on, or this was going to end badly. Not bad, Serge. Not bad at all. Didn't know you had it in ya. There was a mischievous glint in Kid's eye as she rewarded me with a few rare words of praise. We continued down the corridor, eventually coming across the door on our left. The corridor continued on back toward the terrace. We continued on. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We kept following the corridor. We took the corridor leaving from the left-hand side of the terrace, eventually arriving at an intersection with some stairs. The path to the right led down the stairs. The path to the left was a dark passage, and the main corridor continued straight onward. We went down the stairs. Slowly, we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into blackness as we went. At the bottom, the path split. The way to the left continued on to an atrium that resembled a sort of plaza, while the path to the right was a winding passageway that trailed off into darkness. We went toward the atrium on the left. "You gotta be kidding me," shouted Kid, glaring at me. "Are you telling me to swim through a bloody lake of pteranodons?" "Yeah, you can count me out, mate. How am I supposed to charm me victims with big chunks bitten out of me?" I guess she had a point. "Here's a better plan. Why don't we go back to Beardy and try sticking something down its gob?" Sure enough, she pulled out her bundle of odds and ends. "Do I have to?" I asked, knowing the answer. Which was probably just as well, since Kid only glared at me in response. My hand hovered for a moment before I finally reached for something I chose. The hand-shaped plate. I took the hand-shaped metal plate we'd found. After taking another look at the runes, I was no closer to working out what they might mean. "Here goes nothing." I stuck the plate into the mouth of truth marble maw. As soon as I did so, its eyes rolled upward and the wall gave a light judder. A low rumbling sound came from the sculpture's mouth. "This indeed is the ultimate truth of the universe." "Did you hear something?" Yeah. I watched a mouth of truth in confusion. Its great marble tongue lolled out, almost like a snake. It coiled around the plate, seizing it and pulling it deep inside. What's going on? In a panic, I looked to Magil for answers. Seems this ineffable truth of the universe has left even the mouth of tongue-tied. Magil answered in his usual deadpan manner. I think he might even have been trying to make a joke. "Hang on, so that plate thingy revealed the truth of the universe. And you went and crammed it down Beardy's gullet? Do you realize how much we could have sold that for?" Kid kicked the floor in frustration and snapped her fingers. And then drains on all sides of the room suddenly opened wide. The red water formed eddies as it sank away. Helpless, the pteranodons were washed away with the current. Soon only trickles of water were left slowly dripping away. "Well, that's a stroke of luck, ain't it? Guess we won't be sleeping with the fishes tonight," grinned Kid, looking at the empty pool. We crossed the drained room, making for the exit on the other side, and pressed on. We went through the atrium and continued down the corridor before finding ourselves at a fork in the road. The corridor stretched off to the left and right. We went left. We went right. We continued down the dark, dank corridor until some stairs leading downward finally came into the view. We went down the stairs. Slowly, we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into the shadows as we went. At the bottom, we found ourselves at another intersection. Two dim, narrow passageway branched left and right. We took the right path. We followed the corridor for a while before coming across a small door. "Get a whiff of that, something smells good," whispered Kid, sniffing at the air. We went inside. We opened the door. "Blimey, this is a small kitchen." "Must be for the servants," commented Magil. I scanned our surroundings. A basin for washing dishes, cooking utensils, some food made ready for tomorrow, and a mousetrap. It looked like any other commoner's kitchen. Kid walked over to a large pot filled with food and peered inside. "Looks like tomorrow's lunch. Wanna try some, Serge? I was feeling hungry. I was feeling hungry. Timidly, I peered into the pot. It looked like stew and it didn't smell bad at all, almost inviting. I scooped some up with a ladle and brought it to my mouth. Gulp. It was delicious. It was delicious. This stuff's delicious. You should grab a bowl, kid, I urged between bites. Kid was looking at me again. Staring at me intently, in fact, like she was searching for something. Well, you ain't going green or nothing. Guess it's safe. Alright, let's have a try. She licked her lips with anticipation and swiped my spoon right out of my hand. Fancy a taste, Meg? No. Kid grabbed a bowl from nearby and began spooning out more. I did the same. We ate our fill. The stew was still warm and it felt as though the magic of fresh home cooking was easing my wounds somewhat. Suddenly, a little voice rang out. You there, the young man with the braid. Kid froze. Oi, who you calling a bloke? Kid barked angrily in the direction the voice was coming from. A mouse was looking at us with eyes like saucers from the inside of a mousetrap hanging from the wall in the corner of the room. Oh, I am sorry. You're a young lady, I see. The mouse bowed its head in apology. Please, kind young lady, you must hear me out. The mouse put its paws together and stared pleadingly at Kid. I left the nest to find food for my mother, but as you can see, I managed to get myself caught in a trap. If you leave me here, I will surely be eaten by goblins. Kid eyed the little creature suspiciously. Eaten by goblins? Wait, that's two. Putting two and two together, Kid ran for the sink. I beg of you, please, free me from this trap. My mother is sick and she'll be terribly worried about what has become of me. The mouse was clearly begging for its life, but there was also an odd little glint in his eye. Meanwhile, Kid was at the sink. Blurr! I'm never gonna get that taste out of my mouth. I'll be buggered if I'm hanging around here any longer. Kid had returned from the sink, only to stamp off toward the door. She was looking very green around the gills. Kind lady, I don't suppose you could free me first? You got yourself into this mess. You can sort it out yourself. Kid all but spat on the ground as she left the room. The mouse's eyes welled up as it looked at me. Young man, please, you're my only hope. I freed the mouse. Fine. Unable to bear it staring at me anymore with those pleading eyes, I lifted down the cage and opened the door. The mouse bounded happily out from inside. The mouse gave a wicked chuckle. You poor, naive fool. Suddenly, its body began to balloon massively in size. Oi, Serge, what are you doing in... Kid stopped in horror the moment she opened the door. Bugger me, a Griffon! The enormous creature stared balefully down at us. Idiot humans, my mother is not sick, but yours will be when she sees what I've done to you. Get going, Serge. You're a bloody liability, you are. Oof. Okay, maybe I made a mistake, but she didn't have to rub it in like that. The Griffon gave an almighty cry and leapt right at us. Its razor-sharp talons. I ducked to dodge the attack. Caught off guard, I tried my best to dodge the attack. But the blow never came as the Griffon suddenly lost its balance and came crashing to the ground. Oh bother, I'm too hungry to even fight properly. What on earth? I breathed a sigh of relief, running a hand down my chest. Alright, little mouse, now it's time for the real show to begin. Kid walked up to the Griffon, cracking her knuckles. Gulp. Please, kindly young lady, this is all a misunderstanding, a terrible misunderstanding. Panicking, the creature leapt to its feet. You can't kill me, I have useful information. If you let me go, I promise I'll tell you everything I know. Everything. Yeah, I know how much a promise from the likes of you is worth. Kit took another step toward the Griffon, not skipping a beat. Rark, please. Kit kept on coming. The Griffon kept on shrinking away. Enough, Magill called for Kit to stop. Let's hear it. Oh, thank you, kind sir. The Griffon was beside itself with relief. Spoil my fun, why don't ya? Grumbled Kid, pouting as she turned away. Listen well, O merciful savior. Right, thrice. Right thrice, left twice, right twice. Should you find yourself trapped in one of Link's swirling snares, remember my words. Let me write that down, just in case. Right thrice, left twice, right twice. With that, the Griffon returned to its mouse-like form and disappeared into a small hole in the wall. Trapped in Link's snares? As if I'd be thick enough to walk into one of his traps. Let's get out of here. We wasted enough time already. Kit turned on her heel and made for the door. We left the kitchen. Leaving the room behind us, we took a right turn down the corridor. We followed it for a while before coming to an intersection. The way to the left ended at a staircase going up. The corridor also continued directly ahead, but the way was completely enshrouded in darkness. We pressed on. We continued on down the corridor until it ended at a large door covered in scratches and other marks. Above the door was a wooden plate. It bore the legend "Guard Room" in elaborate calligraphy. Well, guards are one thing we definitely don't need right now. Come on, let's do one. With Kit around, who knew what kind of mess we were about to get into? Maybe, but with Serge around, who knows what kind of traps we're about to walk into. What a trusting relationship we enjoyed. Then let us turn back for now. We made our way back through the corridor. We left the room and took the left turn down the corridor. We followed it for a while before coming to an intersection. The way to the right ended at a staircase going up. The corridor continued directly ahead, but the way was completely enshrouded in darkness. Pressed on toward the kitchen. We went right towards the stairs going up. We followed the corridor, eventually reaching a fork in the path. The path to the left would take us back to the atrium with the fountain. The corridor also continued directly ahead, but the way was completely enshrouded in darkness. We continued straight on. We continued down the corridor, eventually reaching an old, rather sturdy-looking door. Bloody marvelous. Another bloody door with a bloody magic barrier on it. Wonder what's inside. Me sixth sense tells me it ain't treasure. Kid whispered back to us as she examined the door. I suspect that this is the Manor's dungeon, replied Magill, his eyes closed in concentration. I can hear the sound of someone moaning in the darkness on the other side. But there's nothing we can do, and thus it is of little concern to us now. Let us turn back. With no way of getting through the door, we retraced our steps down the corridor. After making our way down the dark corridor, we came to a branch in the path. The path to the right would take us back to the atrium with the fountain. Going straight on would take us to some stairs going down. We continued straight. We continued down the dark, dank corridor until some stairs leading downward finally came into view. We went down the stairs. Slowly we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into the shadows as we went. At the bottom, we found ourselves at another intersection. The dim, narrow passageway branched left and right. Took a right path toward the kitchens. We took the left path. We continued on down the corridor until it ended at a large door covered in scratches and other marks. Above the door was a wooden plate. It bore the legend guard room in elaborate calligraphy. Well, reckon this might be where to find the key to that door upstairs? No getting past that bloody magic barrier without it. Kid pressed an ear against the door and listened carefully. Doesn't sound like anyone's in there, she whispered. We went inside. Kid opened the door. The room had seemed completely silent from the outside, so we had thought it would be empty. But there inside was a lone goblin. It was sitting in a chair with a book in its hand. A light steam drifted from the teacup on the table in front of it, and with it a delicate aroma. The goblin peered at us, curiously over its spectacles. There was something different about this one. I could tell it much at a glance. Heavens, how rare it is to have guests. Heavens, how well spoken for a goblin. I could only feel dread and suspicion at the sight of him nonetheless. Sorry, mate, but we're not your guests. Cough up the key to the dungeon if you want to live. Kid slammed her knife into the table to illustrate her point. But the goblin didn't so much as flinch. Ah, you must be Kid. What a pleasure this is. I have always so wanted to meet you. Why, you're even more ravishing than the rumors would. Before the goblin could finish, Kid's knife flew through the air. With a quick flick of his wrist, the goblin caught the blade with the back of his book, a mere inch from his face. I see that your approach is as radical as the name of your merry band would suggest, the goblin said, pulling the knife free and handing it back to Kid. She took it without a word. But her gaze has changed. She was like a cat, cautiously studying its prey. And I was just getting the good part too. Ah well, I suppose I shall have to give up on ever finishing it now. The goblin casually flung the book over his shoulder and into a nearby bin. Allow me to introduce myself, if I may. I am Grismeld, and I am the guard on watch. No need to stand. Please, do take a seat. You're welcome to tea, of course. The goblin beckoned us to sit down. Did he mean to poison us? If I may, Magill calmly took a seat, ignoring the obvious suspicion in the air. Sat down next to Magill. Look to Kid. Confused by how at home Magill seemed, I looked to Kid. She remained where she stood, seemingly unsure what to make of this goblin, but apparently quite sure she wasn't going to sit down. I decided to stay standing as well. The goblin poured 3 cups of tea. Here you are? Without the slightest hint of hesitation, Magill took his teacup and lifted it to his lips. He sipped, then placed the cup back on its saucer. Hilmiailin tea, not a blend I'd expect to find here. What a pleasure it is to encounter a fellow connoisseur. Yes, it's a rare blend, and one mainly enjoyed by the noble classes. I couldn't believe the conversation I was hearing, but I also couldn't help wondering what this rare tea might taste like. My eyes rested on the cup that had been poured for me. As much as I wanted the tea, I had to refuse. I drank the tea. I took a seat and picked up the teacup. This is great, I blurted out. I've never had such a delicious brew in my entire life. My aches and pains faded away. I glanced over at Kid, who was blowing manically at the liquid in her cup. I'd forgotten that she was paranoid about burning her mouth on things. Now that we're comfortable, let's get down to brass tacks, as they say. I do indeed have the key to this dungeon, as you surmised, but you will also be aware that I cannot simply give it away. I glanced over at Kid again. Typical, she wasn't listening to a word Grismeld was saying. She was still huffing and puffing at her tea. It seemed it would be up to me to respond. Here's our offer, give us the key and you get to live. I suppose that means you want something in return. You'd like to know what I want? I want your heads. Grismeld's eyes glistened behind his spectacles. Or rather, I'm sure that's what my employer would have me say. But no, I have no such barbarous aspirations. Furthermore, I doubt I'd be a match for you. Grismeld chuckled as he said this. What I live for is the joy of conversation, which I fear my compatriots are ill-equipped to supply. Perhaps you might have one or two ripping yarns to share. Grinning, he added, I'm sure notorious thieves such as yourselves must have more than a few thrilling tales up your sleeves. So he wanted to hear a story. That seemed a more than fair price to pay for the key. I closed my eyes and thought, aha, I know just the story. How did it begin? One night, a young girl was walking alone in the forest. And then, she was searching for a golden sunflower, the only way to cure her sick mother's illness. She was out hunting for bugs. She was searching for a golden sunflower, the only way to cure her sick mother's illness. Then, she walked and walked, but the sunflower was nowhere to be found. Poor girl went without food for 3 days and 3 nights. She walked and walked, but the sunflower was nowhere to be found. The fragments I remembered seemed about right. There was only one way the story could end. I took a breath and began my tale. One night, a young girl was walking alone in the forest. She was searching for a golden sunflower, the only way to cure her sick mother's illness. She walked and walked, but the sunflower was nowhere to be found. And then, in her moment of darkest despair, she saw a brilliant light. It was none other than the golden sunflower she sought. The young girl gratefully pocketed the sunflower seeds. These will surely save my mother, she thought. She rushed home to give them to her, and her dear mother was hale and hearty once more within days. And they all lived happily ever after. That was beautiful, murmured Kid, wiping a tear from her eye. Grismeld frowned. Not quite what I was expecting, and not the most riveting of tales, but I suppose it'll do. A key, as promised. I took it from Grismeld's hand. Something didn't seem right though. Was he really going to give it up so easily? And was it really alright to trust such a strange goblin? Grismeld seemed to notice my suspicion. He leaned back into his chair, looking at the ceiling. When I was a young tyro, a braver, stupider goblin, I once served General Viper, who was the lord of this manor until his betrayal by Lord Lynx. Despite my boorishness, Lady Riddell always saw something in me worthy of praise. Wait, Riddell? What's Lynx's adopted daughter got to do with anything? Oh, you didn't know. Riddell's real father was none other than General Viper himself. What? Lord Lynx spared Lady Riddell's life so as not to snuff out that of the frozen flame. It's an uncanny stone, you see? Has a life of its own, and some kind of spiritual bond with Lady Riddell. If only there was some way that I could free my lady from this manor. Alas, I alone am powerless to do any such thing. Of course, I would have no qualms if say, you were to topple the usurper. I assume you intend to slay the old beast, I mean. It was a strange inquiry to make so casually. I was too taken aback by the directness of Grismeld's question to reply. I never expected to find one of Link's own guards asking me something like that. Suddenly, I was shoved aside. You're damned right, we're gonna kill him. It was Kid, of course. And in exchange, I'll have some more of that tea to take with us. Kid held out her hand before Grismeld could offer an answer. I suppose I have a bag I can share. Grismeld shuffled awkwardly in his seat as he retrieved it. As ever, I was impressed at how Kid's uncompromising attitude and willingness to speak her mind seemed to always get her what she wanted. Bonzer, sit tight and leave the rest to us, mate. Stowing the bag in her pocket, Kid took the job. You can trust me, I'm a girl of my word. That might have been the biggest lie she'd ever told. Right, let's get moving. She made for the door with a spring in her step. We left the room and Grismeld behind. Rattle. Kid stopped us. There's something there. I listened carefully. Rattle, rattle, rattle. A figure appeared in the darkness on the other side of the corridor. It's a skeleton. We readied ourselves for a fight. You alright, Serge? Yeah, I think so. That's that. Dealt with. Now. Kid turned her attention back to Magil. Can't believe this Drongo, though. Thwack. She brought her fist down hard on his head. Maybe that'll wake you up. Now if you're done here, let's get a bloody move on. What was I... Oh, I was doing great. I felt like nothing could stop me. Maybe you ain't such a Drongo after all. Just goes to show, any old weirdo can make something out of themselves if they put their mind to it. Kid's eyes glinted with mischief. We left the room and took the left turn down the corridor. We followed it for a while before coming to an intersection. The way to the right ended at a staircase going up. The corridor also continued directly ahead, but the way was completely enshrouded in the darkness. We went right toward the stairs going up. The passage soon ended at the foot of some stairs. With Kid taking the lead, we started to climb the narrow staircase. When we reached the top, we found ourselves at the end of a long, straight corridor. We continued on. We followed the corridor, eventually reaching a fork in the path. The path to the left would take us back to the atrium with the fountain. Going straight on would take us to the old sturdy door. We continued straight on toward the cell. We continued down the corridor, eventually reaching an old, rather sturdy-looking door. Right, the key we got from that creepy old goblin should do the trick. Kid slipped the key into the lock. The heavy door groaned slightly as it slowly swung open. Clammy air rose up around our feet, as if crawling blindly through the darkness. This didn't seem like the kind of place anyone in their right mind would visit voluntarily. We pushed a heavy iron door the rest of the way open and stepped into the darkness. There was a row of cells, all locked behind iron bars. 1, 2. Oh, Gulliver, Melgid, Soranda, forgive me, please. Please, forgive me. We heard a voice from the third cell whimpering and crying pathetically. I strained my eyes to look inside. Faintly in the darkness, I could see something that looked like a man sitting on the floor. So this was the source of the voice. Oi, you alright, mate? Kid called out to the figure. Forgive me, It's all my fault. It's all my fault. The dragoons never deserved this. General, Lady Riddell. Oh, forgive me. I beg of you. The old man didn't seem to respond to us at all. He only sat facing the wall, begging forgiveness for who knew what. Hello, can you hear me? Asked Kid, trying again. There'll be no getting through to him. His real self will have long since retreated inside the shell he has created, said Magill, cutting her off. Shell? What do you mean? I asked. He has built a shell around the core of his psyche in order to shield himself from the truth. He is running from something terrible. He has seen something or been through something or has done something. And so he has created his own world on the inside as a final refuge, the outside world lost to him forevermore. I looked at Magill in surprise. I had detected a hint of unspoken sadness in his words. And for some reason, he was looking at Kid, watching over her as she stared at the man in the cell. Seeming to notice my gaze, Magill turned back to face me, assuming his usual emotionless expression once more. We live in a world of sorrow and foolishness. It's only inevitable that some would try to escape it. But despite his hard words, his eyes retained a certain softness, his steely gaze giving way to a gentle light. Do you understand? I think so. Do you understand? Can you be a bit more specific? I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean. Could you explain a little more? I asked him. Of course, you have seen the rapt state Kid enters before stealing something, I take it. Oh, I'd seen it alright. An image of Kid, hands clutched in front of her heart, twirling stars for pupils, floated immediately into my mind. The item in question may not be hers yet, but in her mind she has already taken possession of it, become possessed by it even. In other words, she has been transported into a place completely outside herself. The man you see before you has been transported to a similar place, albeit a much darker one. It made total sense to me now. I still find it amazing how an example from close to home can explain things so clearly. Mag, you're treading on some very thin ice here. Was he? I mean, he had a point. My musings were cut short by her fist, crashing into the side of my head. Don't you even think about agreeing with him, Serge. I could get on her bad side without even opening my mouth. It was almost impressive. We're not gonna get much out of him. He's miles away. Let's just leave him be and try someplace else. Kid made for the door of the dungeon. Wait, called Magill. We must find a way to get this man to speak. What for? I mean, he's speaking already, just none of it makes sense. What are you after? Some things he said piqued my curiosity. He mentioned the dragoons and Riddell too. So? You said the dragoons are ancient history, snapped Kid. Besides, how can we trust anything he says? He's clearly gone off his rocker. She had a point. The old man has long since cut his ties to the real world. What did Magill expect him to say? Without missing a beat, Magill replied, We simply have to bring him back to reality. And how are we gonna do that? You want me to do a little dance for him or something? See if that gets his motor going? I knew if I said anything, I'd get nothing but the earful of a lifetime in return, so I clamped my hands over my mouth to save myself. What are you playing at, Serge? Kid seemed unimpressed. Phew, that was a close one. I don't think that would work, said Magill dryly. Kid's fist flew straight toward his face, but Magill shifted his weight effortlessly, avoiding the attack, and continued. We must break through the shell he has created and drag him back to the real world. And in order to do that, we will need some kind of key. Something that will reach him even through the barrier he has erected. Yeah, and where are we gonna find this key? Asked Kid suspiciously. I don't know, came Magil's simple reply. But there is something in this manor who can tell us. Someone in this manor who can tell us. You don't mean... You're not talking about Riddell, are you? I am, Magil replied with a nod. Alright, fine. Don't know what the hell you expect her to tell us, though. Kid turned on her heel and made for the door. We left the gibbering old man in the dungeon, alone with his sorrow. I followed Kid and Magil back out into the corridor. After making our way down the dark corridor, we came to a branch in the path. The path to the right would take us back to the atrium with the fountain. Going straight on would take us to some stairs going down. We went right toward the atrium. The corridor was dark and clammy. We pressed on, and soon the entrance of the atrium came into view. We arrived back in the atrium. An exit leading to Link's and Riddell's rooms gaped ominously from across the cavernous space. We continued on. Leaving the atrium behind us, we immediately found ourselves at a fork in the path. To the right was the passage to some stairs leading upward. Dark passageway continued on directly ahead. We continued along the path ahead. We left the atrium and continued on down the path ahead. Eventually we came across an ornate door on the right-hand side. It was Riddell's room, Link's daughter. We went inside. Is someone there? Came the voice of a young woman. We shrank into the shadows. The woman appeared from deeper within the room. She was lightly made up and had a gentle, unthreatening air about her. It was Link's daughter. Strange. I'm sure I heard someone. I was at a loss as to what to do for a moment. But before I'd had time to do much more than hold my breath, Kid had already darted over and thrust her knife out, stopping the blade only a hair's breadth from the woman's neck. Where's the frozen flame? Answer me! Her voice came out in a harsh growl. I rushed in to hold Kid back before she hurt the poor woman. Kid, do we really have to do it this way? Shut your trap, Surge. Riddell couldn't help but giggle as she watched us bickering. What are you laughing at? Kid shot Riddell a harsh look. It's just, you don't seem like thieves at all. You want me to cut you, girl? I'd be surprised if that knife could cut anything. For a moment I felt faint, imagining Riddell on the floor covered in blood. But then, clang! Kid had thrown her knife to the floor and I saw that it was only a letter opener. Didn't think you noticed. Whatever. I'm not here to mess around killing the likes of you anyway. I have no desire for bloodshed either, said Riddell in a voice that was almost a whisper. I am not your enemy. In fact, I want to help you. There wasn't a hint of hesitation or deception in her voice. Let me guess, you're trapped in the manor too? Riddell only lowered her eyes sadly in response to Kid's question. The frozen flame should never have been allowed to fall into Lynx's hands. Riddell spoke quietly, but deep emotion clearly underpinned her words. The flame was once the property of an ancient kingdom to the north, who kept it for generations. It was said to have the uncanny power to guide people and change history itself. After the kingdom fell, the flame changed hands countless times until eventually it came into my father's possession. That was before I was born. Sometime later, Lynx became aware of the flame's true value. and approached my father under false pretenses of friendship. Not a soul suspected what his true intentions were. And then on that horrible day, he destroyed everything. He killed everything. Riddell shook her head and buried her face in her hands. I don't care about the frozen flame. I don't care about that stupid accursed stone. It means nothing to me. I just want to take it away from Lynx and smash it to pieces right in front of him. And only we can make that happen. Riddell looked up with surprise as Magill spoke. No one else in the world can seize that jewel from Lynx. Riddell stared, speechlessly. And then, in a low voice, she whispered, "What can I do to help you?" "There's a survivor of the Akasia Dragoons in the dungeon who we want to help. And if we're to help him, we need your help," said Magill, taking a step forward. "What? That man? That man is a traitor. It's because of him that father... That's Zoranda. Please, it's the only way." Riddell turned her back to us and hung her head low. The Chamber of Death. There might be something to bring him back to his senses there. After all, it was there that he chose to abandon his pride, his life. I assume the Chamber of Death must be the cell with the trapped ceiling. Riddell nodded. "Yeah, that's gonna be a problem," started Kid. "That thing damn near killed us the last time. You will need to take the Einlenser with you. It is a sacred sword said to have been forged by an ancient sage, and a sister blade to the crimson-cursed Masamune. The timeless blessings of the Einlenser will surely keep you safe from the Chamber of Death's wickedness. It used to be such a sight to see. See it in the hands of Zoranda. It danced like the wind, shone like the stars, and struck like lightning." Lost again in memories of fonder times, Riddell once more bowed her head. "Forgive me. I have little more to tell you." "You told us more than enough. We'll take our leave now," said Magill, turning and making for the door. "I wish I had the strength to change things like you do," whispered Riddell, biting her lip. Kid hesitated for a moment, seemingly deep in thought. "It ain't about strength. It's about having a purpose. Something to fight for. I will be praying for you." Kid shot Riddell a look over her shoulder. "Trey, maybe you can cross your fingers too." We left the room. The passage outside the room continued to our left and right. Going right would take us to Lynx's room. Meanwhile, going left would take us to the atrium and another branch. We took the passage to the right, toward Lynx's room, turned again and left the room. The corridor stretched out beyond the door. We retraced our steps. Eventually, we came across an ornate door on the left-hand side. It was Riddell's room, Lynx's daughter. We continued on our way. We continued down the corridor until we reached an intersection. There was a left turn in the corridor leading to some stairs going upward. The corridor also leads straight on toward the entrance to a large plaza-like atrium. We took the left passage towards the stairs. The passage to the stairway was short. With Kid leading the way, we started to climb the narrow staircase. At the top, we found another intersection. Taking the corridor to the right would lead us to the dead end with a large door, while the way to the left led to the terrace. A narrow side passage in front of us was open. Main hall, terrace, study. We took the corridor to the left toward the terrace. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We kept following the corridor. A short way along the corridor, running from the right-hand side of the terrace, we found an ancient-looking door again on our right. We went inside. In we go. There it is, our ticket to not getting it turned into mincemeat. The ancient sword was right where Kid had left it after pulling it out from the pile of junk. She ran over to where it lay. Looking down at the sword, Magiel muttered, "Two ancient blades, the sacred Einlancer and the cursed Masamune." "What are you on about, Mag? You know something about this Master Mune?" Magiel said nothing. "Well, it seems to mean something to you." "It does." "Uh-huh. Something to do with old friends I don't know about?" "Not exactly." "An enemy then?" "Not exactly." You're being weird, Mag." "Well, whatever. Oi, numbnuts. Grab this thing for me, will ya?" I was still standing by the doorway when Kid called over to me. "Who, me?" "Yeah, you. Or were you gonna make me lug the bloody thing around the place? I'm just a scrawny little girl, ain't I? Call yourself a gentleman." My job. A scrawny little? In whose dark dreams was Kid only a scrawny little girl, I wondered. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by a spinning kick to the chops. Gah! My body flipped over in the air as sparks flew behind my eyes. What the hell was that for? Kid only humped and looked away. Magiel also turned away. I was thoroughly left out in the cold. "Pick up the damn sword, Serge. We ain't got all night." Ye gods, she was a nightmare. Sometimes I wonder why you even bother coming along on these little jaunts. Dazed, I stumbled to my feet and sheepishly picked up the sword. Well, what were we even supposed to do with this tarnished old relic? Whoa! I nearly fell over. That thing was heavy. Good boy. Right off to the chamber of death. Eyes on the prize, lads. Dragging the sword behind me with one hand and clutching my throbbing head with the other, I followed Kid out of the room toward a place where it sounded like a certain doom awaited. Rattle. Kid stopped us. There's something there. I listened carefully. Rattle, rattle. A figure appeared in the darkness on the other side of the corridor. It's a skeleton. We readied ourselves for a fight. Phew. I'd taken a few knocks, but I was alright. A scrape or two wouldn't stop me. Not bad, Serge. Not bad at all. Didn't know you had it in ya. There was a mischievous glint in Kid's eye as she rewarded me with a few rare words of praise. The door led back into the corridor, which stretched off into the left and right. Rightward lay the depths of the manor, while the way to our left led back to the terrace. We went left down the corridor. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We kept following the corridor. Suddenly, Kid stopped in her tracks. Something's there. I quickly turned around to see what it was. There was nothing behind us or in front of us. Where could it be? And then, just as I was trying to figure it out, the wall began moving. A rectangular section opened up and swung around, revealing two enormous goblins clinging to the back. It was like something from one of those stories about assassins sneaking around in old castles. Phew! I'd taken a few knocks, but I was alright. A scrape or two wouldn't stop me. Not bad, Serge. Not bad at all. Didn't know you had it in ya. There was a mischievous glint in Kid's eye as she rewarded me with a few rare words of praise. We continued onward toward the main hall. We continued onward past where the stairs and the side passage emerged into the main corridor. Found ourselves in front of some ornate double doors. This was the main hall of the manor. Main hall of the manor. We turned back. Suddenly, Kid stopped in her tracks. Something's there. We left the hall and returned to the corridor. Eventually, it led us to an intersection. There are some stairs going down and to the right, a dark side passage. If we kept going straight on, we'd arrive back at the terrace. Back at the terrace. Back toward the terrace. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We kept following the corridor. Short way along the corridor, running from the right-hand side of the terrace, we found an ancient-looking door again on our right. We continued on. We returned to creeping down the darkened hallways, as silent as we could. Continuing on down the corridor, we came across a rather sturdy-looking door on our left. A little further on stood a stairway leading upward. We continued on. The corridor entered at the foot of some stairs. With Kid in the lead, we headed upstairs. It was dark and the stairway was narrow. We watched our footing carefully as we climbed. An old sturdy-looking door loomed in the darkness at the top. We went inside. Well, this place is just as creepy as I remember. Lovely, grumbled Kid. She was looking at the stains on the wall. The ceiling had been pulled back up, but that was no reason to believe it might not come grinding down again at any moment. Bearing in mind what Riddell had told us the room was called, it definitely wasn't somewhere where we wanted to linger. Quickly, hissed Magill, before crouching down and examining the ground for clues. Kid and I crouched down too. What were we even looking for, though? What could the old man have left in this room that would help us bring him back to reality? The flagstones of the floor were smeared with a black, gooey substance which gave off an odd, rotten aroma. Shook my head, trying to drive an uncomfortable thought from my mind. Kid saw me and clearly wasn't doing much better herself. She slowly turned to position herself so that she was facing away from the stains on the wall. There was no point in thinking like that. I just had to try. But then the door slammed shut and the gears ground into life. Here we bloody go again. We have to stop it. If we don't deal with the trap, we'll never find what we're looking for. The ceiling sank lower and lower. We ducked our heads, desperately trying to avoid the blades that shut it out of the bottom. Kid looked to me and screamed, "A sword! Use the iron lancer!" "What? How do you..." I plunged a sword into the ceiling. "Alright, let's see if this legendary sword can smash through the ceiling." I jabbed the iron lancer upward with all my might. Clang! Pinched hard off the countless blades flashing down from above, throwing me to the floor. Ow, my hands. Plunged the sword into the ground. There! I drove the sword into the floor with all my might. A shock ran through the room. Beams of light scattered from the blade, covering the floor and walls, and then racing upward. The ceiling gave an almighty shudder, then stopped. We made it. I sank to the floor helplessly, my heart racing. Hey, what's that? Kid was pointing at part of the wall. It was where we'd seen the message written in blood. Guess we found what we're looking for. Part of the wall had collapsed, revealing a cavity behind what had looked like a piece of solid stone. Inside, I could see something glinting faintly in the darkness. Kid reached in with her fingertips, carefully extracting whatever it was from within. It was a slender ring with a delicately engraved design that looked like overlapping ferns. The ring was adorned with several small rubies in a pattern that resembled a bunch of grapes. The Crest of Akasia. This must be an Akasian signet. Kid put the ring on her middle finger, where it sat uneasily. It didn't seem to be her size. The rubies gave off an eerie glint. Right, let's not spend any more time in here than we have to. We'd managed to foil the trap and retrieve the Akasian signet. I left the iron lancer where it stood, and we exited the room. With Kid in the lead, we headed downstairs. We went down the stairs and continued straight ahead, eventually coming across a sturdy-looking door on our right. The corridor continued further on backward toward the terrace. Sturdy looking door. Sturdy looking door on our right. We went inside. We've no time for bubbles. The frozen flame comes before all else. Yeah, I know. In the direction of the terrace. We went in the direction of the terrace. We continued down the corridor, eventually coming across the door on our left. The corridor continued on backward, back toward the terrace. A door on our left. We continued on. After a short walk down the corridor, the terrace came into view. We went out. We kept following the corridor. Leading the group as usual, Kid suddenly stopped. "What's that?" She jabbed her finger at something in the darkness. Straining my eyes, I could see a pale white bundle of something shaking in the shadows. Huh, that's strange. I moved in front of Kid to try to get a better look. And then suddenly, the strange presence started crawling across the floor toward us at an unbelievable speed. I didn't have time to brace myself. The white figure reached my foot, then reared up to its full height. Okay. We went down the stairs. We went toward the atrium on the left. We pressed on. We went left toward the dungeon. We went inside. Having retrieved the Akasian signet, we returned to the old man's cell. As soon as we got there, Magiel took a step forward and grabbed onto the bars. They creaked and groaned as he heaved at them, gritting his teeth, as he summoned every ounce of his might. Slowly, they bowed apart. He stepped into the cell through the gap, and Kid and I followed. The old man was exactly as we had left him, staring into space and muttering meaningless words. Kid walked over to him and crouched down. She grabbed him by the collar and yelled at him. "Wakey, wakey, Granddad. We got a few questions for you. Here, get an eyeful of this. Ring any bells, Kid waved the Akasian signet in his face, shaking him roughly all the while. The old man's head lulled as he limply allowed himself to be manhandled. I stepped between them and tried to stop her. I tried to get between Kid and the old man. She glared at me. "You're in the way, Serge. We're here for answers, remember? But if you really want to help him, you can't chicken out now." Well, look at him. There's no helping him anymore, surely. It's all ended for him long ago. I would not be so certain. This is not over. It still means something. He has simply decided to pretend not to see it. Yeah, but it's not over, you say? Struck by the man's sudden interruption, we all turned to look at him. A faint glimmer of light had returned to his once vacant eyes. That's right, none of this is over until we make Lynx pay. His eyes began to cloud once more. So my former allies have finally come for me. I am to blame. It is because of my indiscretion that the frozen flame was stolen, and that of all the Akasian dragoons, only I remain here in the manor. And now all is well, for you have returned. O Melgid Zoranda, where have you been all this time? Did you all return to Lake Stoic? Never mind all that, Granddad. Where's the frozen flame? Give us a clue, anything. Come on, out with it. I couldn't decide if Kid sounded more annoyed or more desperate. The frozen flame. The old man looked momentarily confused. And then a wan smile crossed his face. My word, Lady Riddell. It has been far too long since last I had the pleasure. Why, you You need only turn the third candlestick from the left as you enter the main hall. That will open the underground vault, as you know. Third candlestick from the left. Kid wrapped her arms around the old man and held him tight. And then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "I'm sorry. I promise we'll get it back." Aha! Gah! The man recoiled in horror and then began to sob once more. "I am to blame. It's all my fault. Forgive me. Forgive me." "Look, if you want to get out of here, now's your chance." But it was no use. He was too busy cowering and wailing to hear me. "We're done here, Serge. We can't help him. There's things we need to be doing." "Thank you," I whispered to the old man before following Kid and Magiel out of the dungeon. After making our way down the dark corridor, we came to a branch in the path. The path to the right would take us back to the atrium with the fountain. We went right toward the atrium. The corridor was dark and clammy. We pressed on, and soon the entrance to the atrium came into view. We arrived back in the atrium. An exit leading to Lynx and Riddell's rooms gaped ominously from across the cavernous space. We continued on. Leaving the atrium behind us, we immediately found ourselves at a fork in the path. To the right was a passage to some stairs leading upward. We took the path to the right, toward the stairs. The passage to the stairway was short. With Kid leading the way, we started to climb the narrow staircase. At the top, we found another intersection. Taking the corridor to the right would lead us to the dead end with a large corridor, while the way to the left led to the terrace. The narrow side passage in front of us was open. We took the corridor to the right toward the main hall. We continued onward past where the stairs and the side passage emerged into the main corridor. We found ourselves in front of some ornate double doors. This was the main hall of the manor. We went inside. Kid pushed open the heavy door as quietly as she could and peered inside. "Looks like the coast is clear." We stepped into the main hall. Dozens of candles provided a dim, flickering light, sending the corners of the room dancing in and out of shadow. The great hall was filled with a heavy silence, the silence unbroken save for the ticking of a large clock that slowly counted the passage of time as if waiting for something. Several portraits glared down at us with cold eyes. We moved through the feeble glow of the candles. "Third candlestick from the left," whispered Kid. "1, 2, 3, there." She reached out towards it. I held my breath as I watched. "Say your prayers, Lynx. We're coming for ya." Kid turned the candlestick. The room trembled with a sudden, rhythmic rumbling sound, as if a massive gear was turning. "What's that?" For a moment, I felt a strange sensation as if I was floating. "Did you feel that?" I started to stagger. "The entire room seems to be moving downward," came the reply from Magiel. I couldn't quite believe it, but I also couldn't deny the feeling of downward motion. The main hall was sinking into the earth. And then another rumble. The room's descent rapidly accelerated. A cold sweat dripped from my back. My heart filled with the mixture of fear and anticipation. What was waiting for us down there? The frozen flame, our prize at the end of this little adventure. But what was it really? Would it live up to our expectations? I tightened my fists, which were slick with sweat. What were Kid and Magiel thinking? The room remained veiled in silence. As if in response to my thoughts, a quiet voice came from next to me. Sometimes it was Kid. I looked over to see her standing stiffly, staring forward with her hands clenched into fists. Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a losing battle, a fight I'll never win, no matter what I'll do. It was a side of her I'd never witnessed before. Even from this angle, I could see fear and doubt flickering across her face. I felt a tender sting in my heart. What are you fighting? What are you fighting? What are you fighting against? Good question. Fate, maybe? Life, even. Not sure I can put me finger on it exactly. It ain't Lynx. I mean, sure, I'm here to fight him, but that's different. It ain't clear cut like that. I feel like there's another me inside me. One that's just sitting there, looking at how empty and pointless everything I do is. That's the best way I can describe it. Anyhow. Yeah, listen to me. Load of bloody nonsense, eh? She smiled ruefully. I don't know exactly what she meant, but I felt like I knew broadly what she was getting at. She may have talked tough, but underneath it all, she felt fear and uncertainty, just like the rest of us. I mean, that was no great revelation in and of itself, but hearing her say it out loud gave me a strange sense of relief. I stole another sidelong glance at her. Her expression was different, more mature somehow. Sorry, mate. You didn't need to hear that. Not exactly me trademark brand of carefree banter, eh? She stuck out her tongue. Normal service had been resumed. Or so it seemed for a second. Thanks, Serge. And you, Mag, she said, suddenly serious again. Couldn't have made it this far without you both. Listen, if we don't... After this, I mean, if we don't get another chance to... You know what, forget it. She closed her eyes and forced a smile. I wasn't sure how to respond, so, true to form, I just stared at her with some more. I could have sworn I caught a flicker of a grin cross Magil's face too. He was standing just at the edge of my field of vision, arms crossed and eyes closed. But maybe it was just my imagination. A contemplative silence descended as the hall continued its journey, down into the bowels of the manor. A crash split the silence, as if we'd collided with something. Scrurch! A loud metallic scraping filled the air. The room rocked and finally came to a halt. Looks like the end of the line. All change. The swelling grandeur of the organ suddenly filled the air. No one had so much as touched it, and yet the keys and the pedals were moving by themselves. The melody it played was both unsettling and sad. Funeral tune, is it? Way to greet your guests. Kit took a long stride forward, and then turned to face me and Magil. Come on, let's go. Magil and I gently nodded our assent. Kid grinned, then turned back to the door. I'm coming for you, Lynx. This is the end for you. And with that, she led us from the hall. We continued down a long, dark corridor, the walls slick with condensation. The air was thick and heavy, as though ripe with the stench of death. Were we really getting close to Link's hidden vault at last? And was there any turning back now for any of us? There was something strange about Kid that night. Magiel didn't seem to be his usual self either, to begin with. It was vanishingly rare for him to speak so much, let alone to show any kind of emotion. What happened to make them change like that? Unable to take the silence anymore, I decided to speak. I had to ask the question that had been on my mind all this time. Why do you want the frozen flame so badly? Hey kid, why do you want the frozen flame so badly? All I got in reply was the cold echo of her footfalls. I should have known. She didn't like to talk about her reason for doing things. After all, it was a topic that was likely to lead to discussion of her past. But then she spoke, though it was almost a whisper. I'm doing it for Sis. Before she died, she told me to find the frozen flame and bury it. Bury it where? Her old mate's grave. Kid looked at her feet as she walked. She wasn't my real sister, but she was as good as family to me. When she took me in, I was bloody helpless. Couldn't remember a thing, and I was barely old enough to survive on my own. She didn't go too much into detail about who her mate was. Best I can remember is that I needed to find the grave of a girl who married another mate of hers and died not long after. She said that's where the frozen flame should be laid to rest, or something like that. To be honest, I wasn't paying much attention at the time. It's not like I could have known what was about to happen. When she disappeared and I realized she wasn't coming back though, I swore I'd make good on what she asked me to do. I'd nab the frozen flame from that rat bastard Lynx and get my revenge. Kid's eyes almost seemed to glow with heat in the cold night air. I'll make him repay. I'll make him pay for everything he's done. No matter what it takes, even if it kills me. And then she fell silent. Sorry, kid, I didn't mean to bring up something so painful. There was a pause before she replied. Nah, you're alright. I should have said something sooner before I roped you into this. Sorry. Silence reigned supreme as I fumbled around to try and find something to say in reply. But all that filled the darkness of the corridor was the sound of yet more footsteps. Suddenly, Magiel stopped in his tracks. Wait. Huh? Kid turned around, puzzled. Just then, a powerful light surged across the floor, and a ring-shaped sigil appeared. Damn it, a blood circle! Kid and Magiel were at least quick enough to try and jump clear. But they weren't quite quick enough. The three of us were trapped in a circle of blinding light. The sigil rotated left and right, with us at the center, cutting off all routes of escape. Yeah, we're trapped! A wall of heat and wind blew up around us. Swirling lines and spirals of light assailed us wherever we turned. Don't let the light mesmerize you. Cover your eyes, shouted Magiel, raising a hand over his mask. Turn with the light, not against it. There has to be a way out. What? I barely even understand what's going on. Kid's elbow brushed against the wall of light surrounding us, sending sparks flying. Nah! Be careful. Merely to touch it is more than enough to harm you. Stay well back. I slowly turned my body to follow the movements of the ring of light, looking for a gap to escape through. Oh, which one was it? Right 3 times. I turned right 3 times. 3 steps to the right. There, I see it. That's our way through. I found a gap in the wall of light and carefully walked through it. Kid, Magil, this way! We managed to get through the barrier unscathed. But we weren't out of the woods yet. There was still another wall of light, swirling with a great wind in front of us. I slowly turned my body to follow the movements of the ring of light, looking for a gap to escape through. I turned left. I forgot who gave us this clue, but it was left 2 times, left twice. I turned left twice. 2 steps to the left. There, I see it. That's our way through. I found a gap in the wall of light and carefully walked through it. Kid, Magil, this way. We managed to get through the barrier, unscathed. But we weren't out of the woods yet. There was still another wall of light swirling with a great wind in front of us. I slowly turned my body to follow the movements of the ring of light, looking for a gap to escape through. I turned right twice. 2 steps to the right. There, I see it. That's our way through. I found a gap in the wall of light and carefully walked through it. Kid, Magil, this way. Suddenly, my body felt light, and I staggered 2 or 3 steps forward. We were back in the deserted passageway we'd been walking down before the blood circle had appeared. The sigil had vanished from the floor, and everything was silent as if nothing had ever been amiss. And then I looked up. Looks like we finally made it, boys. Kid strolled up to the door with a wicked grin on her face. The true frozen flame awaits. Magil's eyes gave a glint from behind his mask, like glass catching moonlight in the darkness of night. Let's go! Kid reached for the handle. So this is the place, huh? Kid narrowed her eyes, straining to see our surroundings in the darkness. A vast, pitch-black expanse surrounded us whichever way we looked. It was as if we'd entered an impossibly vast cave. We were in a place forgotten by time, unknown to the world, hidden deep within the bowels of night. A gentle crimson light hovered in the darkness. A frozen flame. Alright, now it's ours. The light of the flame ebbed and waned gently as if responding to Kid's voice. What the heck is this place? There's mountains of bloody rubble everywhere. Magil took a step further into the room and said in a whisper that was almost a groan. No, it can't be. Ah, but it is. The ruins of the lost kingdom of mages. The voice drifted down through the darkness from above. Kid looked up in shock. Lynx! I'll kick your flea-bitten arse so hard you'll kiss the moon. Kid pulled her knife from her belt and threw it as hard as she could. It fell to the floor with a clang, as if knocked out of the air by some unseen hand. Still the same impetuous child as ever, I see. That's no way to greet an old friend. Smarmy bastard, Kid gritted her teeth with rage. And you, Shadow Dweller, I'll have none of your tricks this time. You must think me a fool if you believe I'll fall for that again. Magil, who had been quietly slipping into the darkness that surrounded us, stopped dead in his tracks. So this was the infamous Lynx. The lord of this deadly manor. The man who had murdered the closest thing Kid had to family. Who had assassinated General Viper and eradicated the Order of the Akasia Dragoons. A pleasure as always, my dear Kid. and I must say, you follow the trail of breadcrumbs I laid for you admirably closely, my greedy little sneak thief. What the bloody... She stepped forward, bristling. Lynx narrowed his eyes as his lips twisted into a snarl. You know what I want, kid. Give me the stone you carry. The stone? Did Kid have some kind of jewel I didn't know about? Don't know what you're on about, mate. She just managed to recover her composure, narrowing her eyes scornfully at her old foe. Spare me the act, child. I know that you have it. I know she gave it to you. Hand over the time egg, now. The what? Whatever it was, I've never heard of it. You're dreaming if you think I'll give it to the likes of you, Kid shot back. It's all I have left of her. I'll never let go of it. Not for anyone, and definitely not for you. I'll tell you what's gonna happen, you bastard. First, I'm gonna take the frozen flame, and then I'm gonna ram it down your throat. Incorrigible young fool. I was hoping this might be a civilized exchange. Alas. It seemed my words will only fall on deaf ears, and you are determined to repeat your past errors. Lynx moved his hand to the grip of the ornate golden saber that hung from his belt. Last time I showed you mercy and let you leave with your life. That was a mistake, one which I mean to correct. Search, Magil, stay back! Kid took a step forward, glaring at Lynx, her gaze unflinching. This ends here and now. You pay for what you've done. You pay for what you did to Luca. With a scream, Kid leapt into the air like a bird taking flight. Her foot lashed out in a scything kick aimed right at the side of Lynx's head. But there was no contact. Where Lynx had been merely moments before, now there was only empty space. Kid landed and immediately launched herself back into the air, putting the full force of her momentum into another kick. This time, Lynx leaned back, letting Kid's foot swing past only a hair's breadth of his nose. And then it was Lynx's turn. He lashed out with his saber, carving an arc through the air in front of him. Kid was ready for him, however, and had already jumped back to a safe distance. The two glared at each other from mere footsteps apart. At least you had the decency to prepare a little better than last time, Lynx purred. A red line appeared on Kid's cheek, slowly coalescing into a drop of blood. Kid! In a flash, she launched herself into yet another attack. Lynx dodged to the side, then made to strike her with the hilt of his saber. Kid moved awkwardly to avoid the attack, losing her footing. And then Lynx was on her, like a bird of prey before she could fully recover. There was a gasp and a cough as Lynx drove his knee into the pit of her stomach. Kid collapsed. A steady stream of red dripped from her lips. Will that be all, girl? Lynx gave Kid a merciless kick to the side, sending her flying. She landed on a pile of rubble, her body rolling until she hit a large stone pillar, and there she lay, lifelessly still. Kid! Kid! I screamed her name as I charged toward Lynx. But Magil was there already. He flew through the darkness, a part of the shadows, before crashing down on Lynx like a bolt from the blue. Lynx jumped back, and countless threads of light flew from his fingertips towards Magil. With a droning hum, the threads of light surrounded Magil, crossing over one another. They spread to form a lattice of light that gave off a blinding glare and trapped Magil where he stood. What is this? Magil staggered and groaned, attempting to shield his eyes with his hands. It is a simple enough spell, my shadowy friend, for those inclined to learn it, and one which, sadly for you, leaves no darkness in which to hide. Lynx leered at Maggle with a venomous grin. You've been quite the thorn in my side. I'll let you live long enough to regret it. Maggle struggled and groaned. I had to do something. Kid and Maggle needed me. What was I gonna do? Challenged Lynx. Lynx had started making his way over toward Kid while I was paralyzed with indecision. What's the matter, Kid? You were so boldly only a moment ago. Aren't you going to keep me entertained? Lynx looked down his nose at Kid's broken body. Now do you want to give me the time egg? We can still be civilized about this. I am, of course, a gentleman, and it pains me to have to seize a fair maiden's valuable by force. Even if the fair maiden in question is in fact a filthy street rat. He pressed his foot into Kid's head. I could hear her voice faint and breathless. It's Luca's stone, not yours. I'll never give it to anyone. And no way will I give it to the likes of you. I couldn't let him get any closer to her. I challenged Lynx. I charged at Lynx. I screamed as I rushed towards Kid's nemesis. And then, in one fluid motion, he spun around to face me, lashing out with his saber. I tried my best to dodge the blow, but the blade sliced into my body. Ah! I collapsed in a heap and rolled down onto the rubble. You aren't the first arrogant little street rat I've cut down, and you won't be the last. His claw-like fingers clamped around my throat. I couldn't breathe. Tightening his grip, Lynx lifted me bodily until my feet were dangling in the air. I could feel his talons mercilessly digging deeper and deeper into my neck. Panic filled my mind. Look, Kid. See your friend. See him suffer. This is your doing. This is your hand around his neck. Kid's breathing was ragged and blood still dripped from her lips. Opening an eye, she groggily raised her head. But she couldn't get up. She didn't have the strength. Search! Give me the time egg. Do you even know what it is? I suspect not. Think of it as a concentrated pocket of space. With the frozen flame and the time egg in hand, one can bend the fabric of space and time and rewrite the past. There are errors that I mean to correct, mistakes in the past that must be set right. Lynx's narrow, emotionless eyes returned to my face. How long before he perishes, I wonder? I struggled to breathe, but could only make choking sounds. Kid screamed my name. Decide, will you watch the boy die or relent? Does his life mean nothing to you? I can't. She balled her hands into fists and dropped her gaze. My vision started to fade. And then I heard her voice as she struggled to speak through the pain. I'm sorry, Serge, but I swore I'd sacrifice anything to stop Lynx. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. It was all I could do to force the words out past Lynx's icy grip. I was starting to black out. Was this really how it was gonna end? For crying out loud. Fine, you win. Here, have your damn rock. Lynx's grip on my throat loosened. Groaning with pain, Kid reached a shaking hand into her shirt. I knew you would come around. In the end. Lynx threw my body to the ground, then walked over toward her. Just shut up and take it, you bastard. It's all you deserve. With all the strength she could still muster, Kid lashed out at Lynx with her right hand. Gah! He leapt back in a desperate attempt to evade the blow. But it was too late. Kid's nails, sharp as cat's claws, raked mercilessly into his face. Lynx roared with pain. He staggered, clutching his left eye. Blood oozed through the gaps in his fingers. You wretched little chit of a girl. Lynx stood awkwardly, still clutching at the wound on his face. The fingers of his free hand arced into furious talons as he walked back toward Kid, who still lay on the ground. "I will kill you all." He kicked her hard, concentrating all his wrath and venom into the blow. Kid gasped as all the wind was knocked out of her, yet more blood ran from her mouth as her body rolled across the floor. "Kid," I yelled hoarsely, clutching my burning throat with one hand. Lynx turned his head slowly to look at me, one eye fixing on me coldly as it came into view. He took a step toward me. "Yes, perhaps it would be better to start with you. My dear Kid, rest assured that your friend's death will be a most elaborate and painful one. You will truly know what it means to suffer, boy. I will put you through the same suffering as I did that Luca woman." Kid's body stirred with shock and horror. Her eyes slowly opened, fixing on Lynx. They were wild eyes, strained with the blood that poured from her brow. Gritting her teeth, she staggered to her feet. "Lynx! Lynx!" And then an explosion of light burst forth from the frozen flame. Another light began to form from somewhere near Kid's chest, resonating with the light from the frozen flame. The twin lights entwined, twirling slowly upward. And as it rose, the golden spiral spread. "No, this can't be!" Lynx stood motionless, transfixed by the spectacle. Was this the Time Egg's power? Kid screamed as a raging blaze of light engulfed her. "I'll never let you do it again. I'll never let you steal from me again." Bathed in the glow, her body shook. Blood-red tears dripped from her eyes as they took on a distant look. And then she collapsed to the ground as if all the life had gone out of her. I heard a voice. It was quiet and still like the evening. "It has come to pass." Kid is retracing her lost memories back through time, back to the Lost Kingdom. It was through her power that the kingdom fell, that it was swallowed in the all-encompassing vortex of time. In her grief, she wished to disappear, her past, her future. She wanted all to sink into the void, to be lost in the seething whirl of time. She despised what she had done. She closed herself off from all that she saw and heard, and cursed her very existence. But the stone wished for her to live. The hands of her clock were rewound, her memories unraveled. The stone gave her a chance to begin again. The stone had both the power and the will to bring all this about. Sinking through the sea of time, she drifted here, a mere babe, her memories a blank state. The time egg shattered, its fragments raining down on the world, becoming shards of sorrow and anguish. The world around us drifted into pieces. It swallowed us, engulfed us. We were consumed, locked into the void. And then, a girl's scream echoed in the darkness. That voice. Was that Kid? It sounded just like... No, this is all wrong. The black vortex, it surrounds us. No, stop! Where am I? I have lost everything, and now I can but wander. The world drifts, and time is a blur. There is only an endless, unknowable sea. This is where time begins and ends. This is where all life finds peace. I see myself as a baby crying next to my mother, an exhausted yet proud look upon her face. I see myself aged and wizened, waiting to succumb to death's embrace with a smile. I see countless incarnations of myself, walking time's intricate corridors as ghosts. This is a place where countless worlds overlap and infinite dreams play out. If only I could rest here for eternity. If only I could free myself of all my burdens and sleep here in this sea of dreams. But I hear it calling me. I hear the song. Kid, please. Can you hear me? Kid, say something. Kid, you've got to stay with me. Who's that? Who is calling me? Serge? What? Where am I? Kid, you're awake. I heard a song. It was beautiful. It was that song that Luca loved. Kid closed her eyes, and her face glowed with a warm smile. I'll never forget that song. Makes me want to cry whenever I hear it. I'm just glad you're back. I felt like I was losing you. Like you were going somewhere far, far away. Before I knew it, I was humming the song for you. I don't know if I ever mentioned it, but I wrote it when I first started out as a musician. I knew you liked it, so Kid gave a gentle nod. It was you. You were the one who called me back. That was you calling me name. Thanks, Serge. It's okay. It's okay now. I'm back. Suddenly, she gasped with pain. Link's saber had plunged deep in her right shoulder. And towering over us was Lynx himself. I told you, kid. I told you I would kill you. She had no strength left to. I tried to protect Kid. I threw myself over Kid's inert form. I had to protect her. Ha! You rushed needlessly to your grave, boy. Lynx glared coldly at me with his remaining eye. Alas, your time has come. He raised his saber high, preparing to strike. Enough. Stunned, we looked toward the intruder. You! There stood an old crone, her wizened feature obscured by a heavy hood. How had she made it all the way down here? Lady Vera. And what have we done to bring Por's Magister General running, I wonder, he growled. It's been far too long, Lord Lynx. A pity that I seem not to have caught you at your best. The crone met Lynx's mad stare head on. I will take the frozen flame. After all, it seems you two have been quite unable to decide which of you should have it. She raised a hand and armed soldiers poured into the room. Magio lifted Kid to her feet. This seems like a good time to leave. Lynx snarled. You'll regret this, witch. He kicked off from the floor, and his body rose into the air. Then he turned his venomous glare on us. And you, kid, you'll pay for this with your life soon enough. You will never be safe from me. With that, he disappeared like a puff of smoke. The crone lingered for a moment, her eyes resting on us. Kid, if you wish to try and steal the frozen flame again, you are welcome to try anytime you please. We'll be waiting. But you'll have to get out of here alive first. The soldiers drew their weapons and fell upon us. Darkness, heed my call. With Kid slumped against him, Magill spread his arms and drew a sigil in the air. Hurry, Surge, this way! I grabbed onto him and we plunged into dark blackness. Thanks to Magill's magic, we managed to escape the manor alive. But the lights of torches dotted the forest, and we could hear soldiers calling to one another. We stopped briefly in the darkness of the woods, and Kid leaned heavily on a tree, desperately trying to quiet her ragged breathing. It was a terrible wound she'd suffered, and it seemed to be taking its toll. Are you okay, Kid? Yeah. Don't worry about me, mate. We're surrounded. It won't be long before they find us, said Magill, his eyes cautiously scanning the area. Kid raised her head to look at me. It's me and Magill they want. Get out of here, Surge. It's us they want, not you. What are you saying? I'm not leaving you here. Look at you, you can barely stand. It's nothing I can't handle. And besides, I've got Magill with me. If they catch you with us, they won't go easy on you. But... I remembered everything. I remembered another me. A me from a long, long time ago. Slowly, Kid averted her gaze, looking up at the night sky. I have to go. The stars reflected in her eyes, and suddenly, she looked like nothing more than an ordinary young girl with a sad, distant expression on her face. Kid. Don't worry, Surge. I'm okay. We'll meet again. Kid smiled. We'll meet again. Somewhere, someday. Sometime. Promise. Her eyes closed gently. I didn't manage to nick the frozen flame in the end. And I lost the time egg too. The only thing I had left of Luca's. But it's okay. Everything's gonna be okay. There's something inside me that shines brighter than any stupid jewel. The most important thing in the world. She opened her eyes again and fixed them on me. I could have lost myself in their depths forever. No one can take it from me, not for as long as I live. There was nothing else in this world I wanted but this. I doubted I'd ever want anything again. I only wanted this moment. All the clocks in the world could have stopped right then and there, for all I cared. And that was exactly what I wished for as I gazed at her. Goodbye, Surge. And thanks. She looked down, then turned away and disappeared into the darkness of the night. Would I ever see her again? Kid! Don't follow me, Surge. Please. Just don't. I strained to try and catch a glimpse of her as the last traces of her shadow vanished toward a place I might never reach again. No, Kid! I leapt to my feet, meaning to chase after her, but a shadow soon blocked my path. Magiel! Without saying a word, he slowly shook his head. Behind the mask, I saw sadness in his eyes. Then the shadow withdrew and melted into the darkness. Magiel! Kid! Wait, don't leave me! I screamed into the night, but there was no reply. The black silence swallowed my cries. Kid! Kid! And so ends another tale. Perhaps one day, I'll see Kid, Magiel, and Riddell again. One day, somewhere, at another time, in another world. Perhaps none of us will even realize it. That's a story for another day. For now, I must put down my pen. I closed my grandfather's diary, and then from downstairs I heard my mother calling. Did you hear me? Your friend's here. Nimble footsteps charged up the stairs. The door flew open. In tumbled a young girl, a girl who seemed somehow familiar. Hey Serge, it's a beautiful day for adventuring. I found a rundown old manor off the woods to the north. You wanna go exploring? Come on, put the book down and let's get out of it. Let's get out there. That was a good story. It was hard to do this video, but... Yeah, that was a good story. It's sad, but it's good.